Chapter 2097. The sword light was like lightning, and silver lotuses bloomed. 9 Tribulation Realm demon generals were killed in one move, dying without a complete corpse. As for Ji Tianxing, he was unscathed. His white robe and hair were still spotless. More than 20 human generals rushed over, but they were stunned by the scene in front of them. Their eyes widened in horror, revealing expressions of disbelief. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed it. That handsome and valiant white-robed youth was clearly so young, but he was able to kill 9 demon generals in one move. What kind of amazing strength was this? Was he a top martial lord? Or was he an extraordinary martial saint expert? No one knew the answer. The generals also did not recognize this unfamiliar white-robed youth. Just as everyone was stunned, the white-robed youth attacked again. His feet moved in a mysterious way, and his body flashed in the sky with a series of afterimages. Swish, swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, 7 silver-white sparks bloomed in the sky within a 50-kilometer radius. They were as gorgeous as 7 stars in a row. At the same time, the bodies of the 7 demon generals exploded, turning into a rain of dark purple flesh and blood, burning into ashes in the sparks. The 7 demon generals were scattered in different places, several kilometers away from each other. However, Ji Tianxing was too fast, and his swordsmanship was too amazing. He killed all of them in the blink of an eye. In the eyes of many human generals, the 7 demon generals were killed at the same time. Everyone was so shocked that their hearts stopped beating. They looked at Ji Tianxing in amazement, shocked. Oh my God! This general, no, who is this senior? We have never seen him before. He should not be a general of our army. Maybe he is a strong reinforcement that Marshal Xie invited. What a terrifying movement technique, what an amazing swordsmanship. Today is really an eye-opener. I am sure that this senior is definitely a martial saint expert. That decisive and unparalleled swordsmanship is not inferior to Marshal Xie's. For a moment, hundreds of human generals in the sky stared at Ji Tianxing's figure, exclaiming and discussing. However, Ji Tianxing turned a deaf ear to them. His figure continued to flicker in the sky, killing demon generals one after another. He executed the heavenly dragon's 7 steps and held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand. He executed an extraordinarily profound sword technique, and there was actually no one who was a match for him. No one could stop it, and even gods and ghosts would flee. In the eyes of many human soldiers, there were only countless afterimages of Ji Tianxing and the silver sword light that filled the sky. Swish, swish. In the short span of 100 breaths, Ji Tianxing had actually killed over 150 devil generals in succession. The battlefield was immediately thrown into chaos. The remaining 1,000 devil race generals were all frightened into retreating, not daring to get close to Ji Tianxing. The morale of the human generals was greatly boosted, and they took the opportunity to attack the demon generals, forcing them to retreat again and again. When Ji Tianxing saw that the battle in the sky was stabilizing, he looked down at the battlefield below. Seeing the demon race army surging forward with murderous intent, and the human race army constantly retreating, he hurriedly stepped in to help. Heavenly Dragon Palm. With a wave of his left palm, an overwhelming golden light shot out, forming a 1,000-feet-long golden dragon. The heavenly dragon let out a dragon roar that shook the clouds, and with the power to destroy heaven and earth, it swooped down toward the battlefield. Boom! The next moment, an earth-shattering explosion erupted, shaking a radius of hundreds of miles. A 30-mile gap was blasted open in the demon race army's formation on the spot. On the grassland that was sprinkled with corpses and blood, a huge pit was blasted open, and dust flew up into the sky. At least 20,000 devil race soldiers were killed on the spot by the heavenly dragon palm, turning into dust and scattering on the battlefield. Meteor fire shower. Ji Tianxing shouted with a grave expression, and his aura erupted to the extreme as he brazenly used his ultimate killing move. He formed a sword seal with his left hand and waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand, and a soaring golden flame ignited behind him. Immediately, nearly 100 silver light spots lit up in the dusky sky and blasted down like meteors. Following the meteor from outer space was an overwhelming surge of heavenly fire. Inside and outside the Immortal Overlook Pass, it was instantly lit up by the stars and flames, and the heaven and earth were filled with radiance. The hundreds of thousands of humans and demons were so shocked that their expressions changed drastically, and they could not open their eyes because of the blinding light. Countless soldiers looked up at the sky instinctively. What they saw was a human youth in a white robe, with long hair and a mysterious black sword in his hand. He stood proudly in the sky, as majestic and sacred as a god, and so powerful that it made people respect him. The meteors and heavenly fire that fell from the sky were like the servants of a god, following his summons. Rumble! In the next moment, hundreds of meteors that were as large as mountains crashed into the demon race's camp. Next, the overwhelming heavenly fire covered a radius of nearly 100 miles, drowning more than 200,000 devil race soldiers. The grassland outside the Immortal Overlook Pass was instantly turned into a sea of fire, and smoke and dust covered the sky. The deafening sound was as if the heaven and earth were falling apart, and the sun and moon were collapsing, causing everyone to feel dizzy. The ground within a radius of a few hundred miles was trembling violently as spiderweb-like cracks appeared all over the ground. Even the 10,000-meter-tall, majestic Immortal Overlook Pass was shaking violently from the impact. Such a destructive scene made the hundreds of thousands of soldiers tremble in fear. While everyone was running and avoiding the shockwaves, the only thing that appeared in their minds was the majestic figure in the white robe. Many of them had the same thought. Who was that young man in the white robe? Was he a human or a god? How could he control the meteors and create such a horrifying natural disaster? After a long while, the smoke and flames that covered the sky gradually dissipated. The battlefield became clear, and the hundreds of thousands of soldiers could finally see the situation clearly. They saw that on the vast grassland, there were hundreds of huge craters, and they were scattered on the ground within a radius of 200 miles. This huge crater had been burned black by the heavenly fire, and it had completely turned into a charred ruin. At the bottom of the crater, there were remnants of dark red lava, and wisps of flames were floating around. At least 200,000 soldiers of the demon race army had been burned to ashes and disappeared. The ground around the crater was covered with a thick layer of dust, and it was also charred black. The formation of the demon race army was broken, and they were split into several groups, scattered and defeated. More importantly, after such a destructive attack, countless soldiers of the demon race were traumatized, and their morale was at an all-time low. When the soldiers of the human race saw this, they were all shocked, and they found it unbelievable. At the same time, the soldiers' morale was greatly boosted, and they charged even more bravely. Ji Tianxing appeared again. He flew above the demon race army, and once again waved his hand and used his ultimate technique. Lightning attraction technique. He formed a spell with both hands, and gathered the power of lightning within a 10,000-mile radius. He condensed it into hundreds of lightning bolts and struck the demon race army. Kaboom! Boom boom boom. Deafening thunders exploded one after another, shaking the heavens. Chapter 2098. Every bolt of lightning had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. Over 100 bolts of lightning struck down at the same time. Even an ordinary martial sage would be turned into charcoal. Most of the demon soldiers on the battlefield were only in the heavenly origin realm and the spirit tempering realm. Under the heavenly lightning, they were like ants that could only be turned into ashes. The thunderous roar lasted for dozens of breaths before it dissipated. The land that was already in ruins became even more chaotic after being struck by over 100 bolts of lightning. Within a radius of 300 miles, there were deep pits and scorched earth. Countless ashes and fragments of weapons and armors were scattered on the ground. Another 100,000 demon soldiers were killed on the spot by the heavenly lightning and disappeared without a trace. The 300,000 survivors of the demon clan were completely terrified. They lost their fighting spirit and will to fight. With Ji Tianxing, the god of death, who could destroy the heavens and the earth, no one dared to muster up any courage. They only wanted to escape from the Immortal Face Pass as soon as possible. There was a commotion in the demon army. Countless people fled outside the Immortal Face Pass in panic. Hundreds of thousands of human soldiers were shocked to see such a drastic change and the scorched earth outside the Immortal Face Pass. Everyone's eyes were focused on Jietianxing. They were full of admiration and respect. All sorts of cheers, shouts, and discussions erupted like a mountain torrent, filling the sky. Our race is mighty. Our race will win. This is unbelievable. That senior can summon the heavenly lightning and kill 100,000 demon soldiers. This is the power of a god. Even our commander Xie can't control the heavenly lightning, right? Who is that senior? Our commander Xie is so powerful. He can invite such a powerful senior to help us. Victory will be ours. Such an unfathomable senior is so young and handsome. This is unbelievable. Senior alone can kill 1,000,000 lions and kill 1,000,000 demon soldiers. Senior's demeanor is unparalleled. He's like a god of war. If I can have 1/10,000th of him, it will be enough to make a name for myself in the army. Countless soldiers were full of admiration and respect for Jietianxing. Jietianxing did not say a word, continuing to pursue the fleeing demon army with his sword. The 9 swords of the burial of heaven, the heavenly dragon palm technique, and various other secret techniques were displayed one by him. Incomparably sharp sword lights, dazzling magical power splendor, and earth-shattering lightning and starry divine fire constantly poured into the demon army. He pursued them for hundreds of miles and killed tens of thousands of devil soldiers. The human generals also hurriedly gave orders. They led hundreds of thousands of soldiers out of the Celestial Overlook Pass and chased after the demon soldiers. For hours later, the battle finally ended. The fleeing devil race army was also completely wiped out. Only a few thousand people managed to escape with their lives. In this battle, the human race had won a complete victory. It was an incomparably beautiful victory. When hundreds of thousands of human warriors returned in triumph, cheers and shouts were heard from both inside and outside the Celestial Overlook Pass. Everyone was jubilant and proud of this perfect victory. However, all the soldiers knew that the greatest contributor to this victory was the mysterious white-robed youth. He alone had killed 300,000 devil soldiers. It could be said that his battle achievements were splendid and shocking to the extreme. After the battle ended, the soldiers were still unwilling to retreat and rest. They were still discussing this matter. The generals who led the army did not have time to reward the soldiers. They hurriedly flew into the sky and greeted the white-robed youth. They saw the white-robed youth standing in the sky with a proud expression. He seemed to be observing and thinking about something. The few generals went up to greet him respectfully and humbly bowed to him. "Senior, I, Wei Yu, pay my respects to you. I, Yi Xianqing, represent the 100,000 soldiers under my command to thank you for your help. I, Ban Yunshan, represent the 100,000 soldiers in the vanguard camp to thank you for your help. I, General." The 5 generals had different facial features. There was a burly middle-aged man, a thin white-haired elder, and a handsome young man. However, they were all in the 3rd or 4th level of the Tribulation Realm and led 100,000 soldiers. In the Celestial Approach Pass, they only obeyed the orders of Xie Wuxing. They only respected Xie Wuxing. However, after the battle just now, the 5 generals worshipped Jietianxing and were in awe of him. Jietianxing looked at the 5 generals calmly and said, "Generals, you don't have to be so courteous. It is my responsibility and mission to kill the devil and protect the territory of the holy nation." The 5 generals were still discussing Jietianxing's identity and background. They even argued about it. Some people thought that Jietianxing was a strong helper invited by Xie Wuxing. He was most likely a friend of Xie Wuxing. Some people thought that he was an expert in the martial arts world. He was most likely an expert who lived in seclusion. He was just passing by and decided to help. Some people thought that he must be a martial sage expert sent by the holy nation. He was most likely a trusted subordinate of the Divine Master. Hearing his words, the 5 generals were certain of his identity. He must be an expert sent by the Divine Master. His goal was to support the celestial approach pass and kill the devil. Wei Yu cupped his hands at Ji Tianxing and asked respectfully, "Senior, you have shown your prowess today and killed more than 300,000 devils. You have made a great contribution. I think our general, Xie Wuxing, would like to thank you in person. It's just that we still don't know Senior's name, so we'd like to ask." Ji Tianxing saw their curious faces and was ready to tell them the truth. However, he remembered what happened at the Heavenly Lion Pass and decided to keep it a secret. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he said expressionlessly, "You don't have to ask. Just bring me to see your general." The 5 generals understood and guessed that he had a secret mission and could not reveal it easily. Therefore, the 5 of them cupped their hands at the same time and said, "If that is the case, we have been rude. Please follow us." Then, the 5 generals surrounded Ji Tianxing and flew into the Celestial Approach Pass. In the Celestial Approach Pass, hundreds of thousands of soldiers were still discussing the previous battle. They were talking excitedly. Seeing Ji Tianxing and the 5 generals flying across the sky, countless people had looks of reverence on their faces as they bowed to greet them. Soon, the 5 generals brought Ji Tianxing to the peak of the Celestial Approach Pass and landed in front of the most glorious and solemn general's palace. The door of the conference hall was wide open. On both sides of the stairs outside the door, there were 2 rows of silver-armored guards. Ji Tianxing was the first to cross the stairs and enter the meeting hall. In the spacious and bright conference hall, there were several golden-armored generals reporting to the white-haired elder at the head of the table. The white-haired elder was thin and tall. He wore a black and white Daoist robe and a white jade crown on his head. He looked extremely sage-like. Without a doubt, he was the general of the Celestial Approach Pass, Xie Wuxing. When he raised his head to look at the entrance of the conference hall and saw Ji Tianxing's face clearly, his body suddenly shook as if he was petrified. His eyes widened and he was stunned for a long time before he came back to his senses. He stood up excitedly and appeared in front of Ji Tianxing in a flash. He stared at Ji Tianxing in disbelief and tears welled up in his eyes. "Master, is it really you?" Xie Wuxing's lips trembled as he asked in a low and stuttering voice. The generals and guards were dumbfounded when they saw Xie Wuxing's excited reaction and heard what he said. Everyone in the hall revealed shocked and astonished expressions as they looked at Ji Tianxing with a face full of doubt. Chapter 2099. The spacious and bright meeting hall fell into silence. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Not only were the 10 generals and a dozen guards stunned, even Ji Tianxing was a little stunned. He frowned and looked at Marshal Saint Xie, who was 5 steps away from him. He stared at his face, entranced. It was a face that was slightly old but not withered. Perhaps it was due to his cultivation, or perhaps it was because he was a martial saint, but his face was still rosy and his complexion was excellent. On his slightly thin face, there was a pair of narrow but deep eyes, which contained the vicissitudes of life and extraordinary wisdom. Under the high bridge of his nose was a pair of thin lips. He had a wisp of white beard that hung down to his chest. When Ji Tianxing first saw this old face, he felt that it was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. When he carefully looked at it twice, a similar face immediately appeared in his mind. Of course, that face of about 20 years old was Marshal Saint Xie's appearance when he was young. Following that, a memory from 1,000 years ago appeared in Ji Tianxing's mind. That year, Ji Tianxing sat at Tianzhu Mountain and challenged all the martial saints in the world. He won every battle and became famous. Countless ambitious youths rushed to Tianzhu Mountain to learn martial arts. The disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains were all hardworking and ambitious young geniuses. Only a skinny and dark-skinned kid was an anomaly among the disciples. This person was like a skinny monkey, and his eyes were abnormally bright. He always had a sloppy appearance, not caring about his appearance. He often had a messy hairstyle and carried a set of jade chess to play chess with his fellow disciples. However, his chess skills were incomparably exquisite, and none of the disciples of Tianzhu Mountain were his match. He did not focus on practicing martial arts and swordsmanship, but did not do his job all day. Naturally, Kenshin was displeased, and Huanglong Daoist reminded and taught him many times. Unfortunately, he was still stubborn, and in the end he angered Huanglong Daoist, who wanted to expel him from the sect. It was late at night in the pouring rain, and he knelt outside Kenshin's study for an entire night. In the end, Kenshin sympathized with his stubbornness, and summoned him to an audience to listen to his story. It turned out that his obsession with chess was related to the massacre of his family. He carried a blood feud and came to Tianzhu Mountain to learn martial arts, wanting to become an expert and avenge his family. Thus, the God of Swords studied his ancient chess book and personally taught him. From then on, he walked on the right path, and his strength increased by leaps and bounds. 300 years later, he successfully broke through the martial sage realm and became the renowned chess saint. He was the disciple of Tianzhu Mountain and the current chess saint Xie Wudao. The memories gradually disappeared, and the young face in Ji Tianxing's mind gradually overlapped with the martial saint Xie in front of him. He finally understood Xie. I did not expect Xie Wudao. Back then, this kid was as dark and skinny as a monkey. He was the ugliest among his fellow disciples. 1,000 years later, he has become so benevolent and sage-like. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself and was about to shout, Xie Wudao. However, just as he spoke, he stopped abruptly. Ji Tianxing glanced at the generals and guards around him and quickly changed his words. He said coldly, Martial Sage Xie, you have the wrong person. Martial Sage Xie stared at him, still immersed in his excitement and joy, and did not react. Master, even though I have not seen your face for 1,000 years, I will always remember it in my heart, and imprint it in my spiritual soul. I will never forget it. Even though you have been through 1,000 years, your appearance, gaze, figure, and aura have not changed. Master, your disciple, Xie Wudao, kowtows. Xie Wudao said sincerely, and was about to kneel down and bow. He was very sure that the white-robed youth in front of him was his master, Kenshin. Regardless of appearance, gaze, or soul aura, there was no difference. However, Ji Tianxing stretched out his hands and held his arms like iron hoops, preventing him from kneeling. Martial Sage Xie, please calm down. I am Ji Tianxing, and I am here on the orders of the Divine Master. I have something important to discuss with you. Ji Tianxing looked at him coldly, and his tone was very serious. It was as if he really did not know him. Xie Wudao looked at him in astonishment. Then he slowly straightened his body and suppressed the excitement in his heart. After 10 breaths, Xie Wudao finally calmed down and returned to his calm and indifferent attitude. He glanced at the generals and guards around him and said in a dignified tone, All of you can leave now. Ben Shuai has something important to discuss with Master Ji. No one is allowed to disturb us. Only then did the 10 generals and the many guards come back to their senses. They looked at Ji Tianxing and Xie Wudao with strange expressions and quickly bowed and left. However, they had all witnessed the situation. After leaving the meeting hall, they began to discuss secretly. Oh my God! What happened to Martial Xie? Why did he suddenly lose his composure? Martial Xie has always been calm and wise. Why did he react so violently? Did you hear that? Martial Xie called that person master, and even wanted to bow to him. Martial Xie's master? I heard that Martial Xie came from Tianzhu Mountain and is Kenshin's direct disciple. Doesn't that mean that young master surnamed Ji is the legendary sword god? That's ridiculous. Kenshin fell 1,000 years ago. How could he appear again? But Martial Xie is such a wise man. How could he mistake his master for someone else? And Martial Xie also said that Master Ji's appearance, eyes, and soul aura are exactly the same. That's too unbelievable. Could it be that reincarnated people really exist in this world? Is Master Ji really Kenshin's reincarnation? Maybe Kenshin didn't fall at all. After all, no one saw him die with their own eyes. It's just a rumor. If it's really Kenshin's reincarnation, then it's a story that will shock the world. No wonder Master Ji is as powerful as a deity. He killed more than 300,000 demons alone. Other than Kenshin, who else could have such a demeanor? The 10 generals and dozens of guards gathered in 2s and 3s to discuss this matter. Everyone guessed that Ji Tianxing was Kenshin, or Kenshin's reincarnation. They were both shocked and excited. They hurried back to the barracks and told the others about this matter. After all, this was a story that had never happened before. Only Ji Tianxing and Xie Wudao were left in the meeting hall. They immediately fell silent. Xie Wudao calmed down. He also felt that this matter was strange. His attitude towards Ji Tianxing was also much calmer. Master Ji, Ben Shuai was rude just now. I've embarrassed myself in front of you. Ben Shuai has heard of Master Ji's reputation and deeds a long time ago. You are the #1 God's disciple of Luo Shui Kingdom, the #1 genius of the human race. Also, Ben Shuai has heard about how you helped the Heavenly Lion pass and defeated the demons. Chapter 2100. Ji Tianxing sat upright on a pear-wood chair, listening with a calm expression. After Xie Wudao finished speaking, he asked in a low voice, Xie Wudao, do you really see Kenshin as your master and respect him your whole life? Xie Wudao was stunned for a moment. His face was full of doubt as he looked at him. Young Master Ji, what do you mean? A master for a day is a father for life. My master treated me like a nephew. Not only did he take me in, but he also taught me martial arts and chess. If not for my master's guidance, I would not have been able to take revenge and achieve what I have today. I carry the mark of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains and am a disciple of Kenshin. This will not change in my life. Xie Wudao frowned. His tone was a little angry, but at the same time, it was resolute and unquestionable. Ji Tianxing was not angry. His expression did not change. He looked at Xie Wudao calmly and asked, Since you see your master as your father, why did you leave the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains and set up your own sect? Xie Wudao was stunned. He pursed his lips with a complicated expression. He was hesitating about how to explain when he suddenly realized something. He looked at Ji Tianxing with dignity and asked, Young Master Ji, as far as Ben Shuai knows, you are the eldest disciple of Luotian Mountain and the most valued disciple of the God Master. You have also contributed a lot to the God Nation. Ben Shuai respects you and is grateful that you came to the Immortal Pass to help. However, the matter of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains and Ben Shuai's master seems to have nothing to do with you. Why do you ask? Ji Tianxing smiled and asked, How can it have nothing to do with me? Didn't you hear the news that I am a disciple of Kenshin? 2 years ago, I returned to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains and managed the affairs of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains with the Huanglong Daoist. What? Xie Wudao's face was filled with shock. He stood up and looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. Your master's disciple? This is impossible. Even if you are master's successor, you shouldn't have the same appearance and temperament as master. Furthermore, your eyes and soul aura are exactly the same as master's. Ji Tianxing glanced at him and calmly explained, That's right, it's because I inherited Kenshin's martial arts legacy. Didn't the Huanglong Daoist mention this to you? Xie Wudao fell silent again. After a moment of hesitation, he said bitterly, Senior Huanglong and I have not contacted each other for many years. Ji Tianxing looked at him with burning eyes. Why don't you contact her? Xie Wudao shook his head and revealed a bitter smile. Junior brother Ji, don't ask me about this. I have my own difficulties. However, I dare to swear to the heavens that I absolutely did not betray Master, nor did I do anything to let down the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. Whether it is Master or Senior Brother Huanglong, I will always be loyal to them. If there is any danger to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, as long as Senior Brother Huanglong says the word, I will go through water and tread on fire without hesitation. Ji Tianxing calmly looked at him for a long time before nodding slightly. All right, I will not ask any more questions. I am willing to believe your words. However, you should still call me young Master Ji. Xie Wudao was startled and asked in confusion, We are all Master's disciples, and you are the youngest successor. You should be our junior brother. Why? There is no reason, just call me young Master Ji. Ji Tianxing said firmly. Xie Wudao looked at him with a complicated expression. He felt bitter in his heart and thought, Could it be that junior brother Ji knows about what happened back then and blames me? No, senior brother Huang Long is definitely not that kind of person. He would not take the initiative to say that. Ji Tianxing saw his strange expression and warned, "From today onwards, don't mention my true identity to anyone, and don't involve the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and Kenshin. Just say that I am the eldest disciple of the Luotian Mountain and that I am here to support the army under the orders of the Divine Master to fight against the devil race." Xie Wudao did not hesitate and quickly nodded. "All right, I will definitely keep this matter a secret for you." Ji Tianxing was still a little worried and said, "Just now, you lost your composure in front of everyone. Those generals and guards will definitely misunderstand and have some complicated conjectures. So, you have to think of a way to make them keep it a secret and not spread the news." Xie Wudao immediately agreed and said solemnly, "Master Ji, young Master Ji, please don't worry. This old man will definitely do as you say." Ji Tianxing then changed the topic and said seriously, "All right, we have finished talking about private matters. Let's talk about business. You are now the commander-in-chief of the Celestial Face Pass, and you are in charge of 3 million soldiers. I am here to help you fight, and I only want to defeat the Devil Race army as soon as possible. What do you plan to do with me?" When it came to military achievements and merits, Xie Wudao became spirited and said with a burning gaze, "Young Master Ji, just now you displayed your invincible might outside the pass. You single-handedly defeated the Devil Race army and killed more than 300,000 Devil Race soldiers. This old man has already heard the report from the generals. Such a world-shaking battle record was simply world-shaking. This old man still felt that it was inconceivable, but now I know that you are actually Master's successor. No wonder you have such a peerless demeanor. Also, the Heavenly Lion Pass's army was able to defeat the Devil Race army within a month because of your help. Your valiant military achievements and legendary deeds have already spread throughout the northern battlefield. Not only are the people of the White Frost Empire grateful and worshipping you, even the people of the Changlong Empire and the Scarlet Sun Empire are full of admiration for you. They only hope that you can save them as soon as possible." Ji Tianxing quietly listened. After Xie Wudao finished speaking, he asked, So? Xie Wudao's face was full of smiles. He said in a playful tone, "This old man has decided to invite you to be the deputy commander of the army and assist this old man in battle. You and this old man are from the same sect, and your military achievements have spread throughout the world. You should be appointed as the deputy commander, and it won't be a waste of your talent. In the future, the strategy and plan to deal with the Devil Race army will be based on your opinion. This old man will fully support you." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "That's good too. Then arrange a place for me to stay and announce the news of my appointment. In addition, arrange the map of the battlefield inside and outside the Celestial Overlook Pass, as well as the information about the Devil Race's military strength and defense, and give it to me." Xie Wudao repeatedly nodded and said, "Rest assured, young Master Ji. This old man will immediately send someone to do it." Ji Tianxing didn't say anything else. He stood up and walked to the door of the conference hall. Then, Xie Wudao's personal guard came in and led Ji Tianxing into the commander's palace to arrange a place for him to stay. This middle-aged guard also had the strength of the second stage of Tribulation Realm. He was actually Xie Wudao's disciple. The place was spacious and bright, and the decorations were elegant and clean. There was also a secret room and a reception hall, which was exactly what Ji Tianxing wanted. After resting in the place, Ji Tianxing entered the secret room alone and prepared to cultivate. At this moment, the voice of the Burial of Heaven sounded in his mind. "Among your many disciples, only a few were the most outstanding and the most loyal." Chapter 2101. Ji Tianxing had already guessed that Burial of Heaven would ask such a question. He raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile, "Do you think that I don't trust Xie Wudao and am testing him on purpose?" "It's obvious that you have already tested him," Burial of Heaven replied calmly. Ji Tianxing looked ahead with a complicated expression. "When I was at Tianzhu Mountain, I mentioned Xiaobai and Xie Wudao to Huang Long. Huang Long avoided talking about Xie Wudao and only talked about Little White for a while. From then on, I guessed that there might be some misunderstanding between Huang Long and Xie Wudao. Burial of Heaven said faintly, "So you questioned Xie Wudao in person just now?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Yes, I'd like to know what happened between them. Unfortunately, Xie Wudao did not say anything, so I did not ask. However, Xie Wudao might have his own difficulties. As long as he did not change his mind about me and Tianju Mountain, it's fine." Burial of Heaven continued, "Since you've already confirmed that Xie Wudao did not betray us, why didn't he tell you the truth? Your attitude towards him and towards Huang Long are clearly two different things." Ji Tianxing nodded. "Of course there is a difference. When news of my death spreads, Shenwu continent will definitely be in a perilous situation. I have offended so many powers and powerhouses in the past, and they will definitely take revenge on Tianju Mountain. For thousands of years, Tianju Mountain has always been in danger and predicament. No matter how loyal a disciple is, it is impossible for them to protect their former glory and faith and accompany Tianju Mountain to its destruction. Many disciples have gone their separate ways and established their own factions. This is human nature, and I do not blame them. Now that I see Xie Wudao again, I will not blame him either. However, Huang Long has always been at Tianju Mountain and has protected it for thousands of years. He is my most loyal disciple, and I naturally trust him the most." After pausing for a moment, Ji Tianxing continued, "Currently, only Yao Yao, Cuckoo, and Huang Long know my true identity, and they will keep their mouths shut. At present, my strength is still not strong enough, so it's not good for me to reveal my identity. Otherwise, there will be endless troubles." Burial of Heaven agreed and nodded, "That's right. There are countless people who want to kill you. Aside from the demon race, there are also many martial Dao forces and martial saint experts." Ji Tianxing said calmly, "Xie Wudao lost his composure in front of everyone in the hall just now, which has already aroused everyone's suspicion and speculation. I could only hide my identity and let Xie Wudao block the news. If I reveal my identity to him, no matter how he disguises himself, he will be exposed in front of everyone. Once the news of Kenshin's rebirth spreads throughout the continent, I'm afraid we'll have no choice but to continue living in exile. I'm not sure how many people want to kill me, and how many will help me." Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then said in a serious tone, "That's good. Before you recover your divine realm, it's best to keep it a secret. Now that Xie Wudao treats you as his junior brother, he will take good care of you. You'll have one more helper." Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "It doesn't matter whether I help or not. Now, I'm going to help him guard the Celestial Overlook Pass and expel the demon race army." Burial of Heaven thought for a moment and asked, "You've just arrived at the Celestial Overlook Pass and you're not preparing to fight. Instead, you're cultivating in the secret room. Could it be that your strength has reached a critical point and you're about to break through to the martial saint realm?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "That's right. I have a feeling that I'll be able to break through within a month. Only when I return to the martial saint realm can I display the true sword Wei lost skill and be qualified to roam the continent." Burial of Heaven reminded him, "That's right. Only when you return to the martial saint realm can you be truly reborn. At that time, you'll be able to do more things, such as the illusory spirit star nucleus under the Broken Soul Cliff. Also, the wreckage of the divine battleship under the Ghost Desert in the North Underworld Mountain." Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "You're only thinking about the illusory spirit star nucleus and the wreckage of the divine battleship. You want me to get them as soon as possible and help you restore to a divine artifact. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten. When I reach the martial saint realm, I'll definitely make a trip there." Burial of Heaven did not say anything more and said, "Then, go into seclusion and cultivate. We'll talk about this later." After that, Burial of Heaven fell into a deep sleep. Ji Tianxing also began to cultivate. Xie Wudao was very efficient. That night, he personally delivered the information that Ji Tianxing wanted. Ji Tianxing spent half the night reading all the information. He also had a sufficient understanding of the situation inside and outside the Celestial Overlook Pass and the military strength of the demon race army. Then, he could rest assured and cultivate. Unknowingly, 5 days had passed. In these 5 days, Ji Tianxing had been cultivating in seclusion in the secret room to break through the bottleneck of the martial saint realm. Xie Wudao did not disturb him, nor did he take the initiative to attack the demon race. He still trained the army as usual and spied on the demon race's intelligence. In addition, he also gathered a few generals and more than 10 guards who were present that day. He instructed everyone to keep it a secret and not to leak any information. However, after what happened that day, the generals and guards leaked the news. The news had already spread in the Celestial Overlook Pass and at least a few 100,000 people knew about it. Moreover, the news had already spread out of the Celestial Overlook Pass and within the Kingdom of Gods. When Xie Wudao knew that the news had been leaked, he was furious and scolded the generals and guards. However, what was done could not be undone and he could not do anything. Even if he killed the generals and guards, it would not help. He could only issue a strict order to forbid the soldiers in the Celestial Overlook Pass from discussing and spreading the news. Once they were discovered or reported, they would be severely punished. On the morning of the 6th day, Ji Tianxing finally came out of seclusion. He had just returned to his room when Xie Wudao heard the news and rushed over. Xie Wudao bowed to him and said in a serious tone, "Young Master Ji, regarding your appointment as the deputy commander, this old man has already announced the news. Moreover, this old man has also instructed more than 20 generals under my command to strictly carry out your orders. Previously, you displayed your invincible prowess outside the Overlook Pass and killed more than 300,000 demon race, which has already intimidated all the soldiers. When the soldiers knew that you were appointed as the deputy commander, they were very excited and expectant. They are waiting for you to lead them to victory." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Since you have already arranged everything, then I am relieved. The soldiers have rested for a few days and now it is time for them to go out of the Overlook Pass and achieve their goals. Xie Wudao, go gather 300,000 elite soldiers. I will lead them to attack the Black Wind Valley." Xie Wudao was about to nod in agreement when he suddenly reacted and his expression changed. Young Master Ji, this old man did not hear wrongly, right? You want to attack the Black Wind Valley? That is the only barrier and line of defense in the wilderness outside the Overlook Pass. The demon race has stationed more than 400,000 soldiers in the Black Wind Valley and set up an inescapable ambush. There is also an indestructible defensive array. You want to attack the Black Wind Valley? I am afraid that no general will dare to accept your order. Chapter 2102. Xie Wudao's reaction was completely within Ji Tianxing's expectations. He listened to Xie Wudao calmly and said, "Lu Baishuang had the same reaction as you when I led my troops to the Sky Lion Pass for the first time." Xie Wudao was stunned for a moment. He looked ashamed and said awkwardly, "Young Master Ji, I was rude. You have led troops into battle 8 times in the Heavenly Lion Pass, and you have achieved complete victory in all of them, without a single defeat. This news has spread throughout the northern battlefield. Your achievements and legends are all over the Kingdom of Gods. Of course, I believe in you. But I can't explain it to the soldiers." Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "You are the commander-in-chief of the Linxian Pass. Your words are orders. Military orders are like mountains. Why do you need to explain?" Xie Wudao was in a dilemma. He hesitated for a moment and explained, "But I am not a marshal or general of the Kingdom of Gods. I am only a leader of the martial arts community. That is why I was appointed as the commander-in-chief of the Linxian Pass. My status and my words are not enough." Disappointment flashed across Ji Tianxing's eyes. His expression was indifferent as he said, "Since that's the case, gather all the generals and head to the conference hall for a discussion. I will personally speak to them." Xie Wudao was embarrassed. He quickly bowed and apologized, "Young Master Ji, I am really sorry. But your prestige is quite high. I believe the generals will listen to your orders." After that, Xie Wudao ordered the guards to gather the 26 generals for a meeting. He personally brought Ji Tianxing to the conference hall. Half an hour later, in the conference hall, Xie Wudao sat on the main seat with a serious and dignified face. Ji Tianxing stood in the conference hall with his back facing the door. He closed his eyes and rested. The 26 generals stepped into the conference hall one after another and stood in 2 rows. Everyone guessed that the commander-in-chief Xie Wudao must have some plan and was about to send out the troops. Everyone was full of anticipation and rubbed their palms together. However, when they saw Ji Tianxing, their expressions were a little strange. They secretly talked to each other through telepathy. Hey, is this the trusted Vice Commander Ji? How can he be so young? I didn't believe you when you said that Deputy Commander Ji was very young. Now that I've seen it with my own eyes, it's truly incredible. Have you heard about the previous incident? If that information is true, then this Lord Ji's status is the pinnacle of the continent, far surpassing the 3 divine masters. Shut up. This is a big secret. Marshal Xie strictly ordered that no one is allowed to talk about it. Commander Xie summoned us for a meeting. Deputy Commander Ji is also present. It seems that Deputy Commander Ji is going to lead the troops. Ha. If Deputy Commander Ji personally leads the army, I'll be the first to ask for permission to go to war. Of course, Vice Marshal Ji can stop 1,000,000 troops by himself. If we follow him into battle, we will definitely be invincible. Not long after, all 26 generals arrived. Xie Wudao said solemnly, since all the generals are here, Ben Shuai would like to make an announcement. Previously, Ben Shuai had announced that Lord Ji Tianxing, who was sent by Luotian Mountain, would be the deputy commander of Linxian Pass to assist Ben Shuai in resisting the devil race. Ben Shuai and Deputy Commander Ji spent a few days to seriously study the situation and the deployment of troops. Finally, they came up with a plan. Today, Deputy Commander Ji will personally lead the troops into battle. Hearing his words, the eyes of all 26 generals lit up. They were filled with excitement and anticipation. Everyone's eyes were gathered on Ji Tianxing. Everyone cupped their hands and bowed to him. They volunteered and shouted, Marshal Ji, this general has witnessed Marshal Ji's peerless demeanor with my own eyes. I'm already convinced by you and am willing to follow you into battle. This general greets Marshal Ji. I'm willing to be the vanguard general for Marshal Ji and sweep away all obstacles. Marshal Ji, this general admires you the most. Please, you must lead this general into battle. Everyone spoke enthusiastically, requesting to follow Ji Tianxing into battle and make a name for themselves. However, Ji Tianxing's expression was calm. He looked around indifferently and said, You don't even know where you are going to battle, yet you're volunteering so bravely. I'm afraid that once you know Ben Shuai's target, you'll be afraid of the slightest thing and keep your mouth shut, right? All the generals were stunned, their faces filled with confusion. Some of the more straightforward generals hurriedly asked, Marshal Ji, where do you plan to attack with 300,000 soldiers? Marshal Ji, as long as you personally lead the troops, no matter where you attack, even if you have to climb a mountain of blades or plunge into a sea of flames, this general will follow. Ji Tianxing smiled in a non-committal manner. His tone was low and dignified as he enunciated each word clearly, I will attack Black Wind Valley today. Upon hearing this news, the 20-some generals all paled and cried out in alarm. What? Black Wind Valley? Heavens! That's the front line of the demon race, the most impregnable line of defense. Did we hear wrongly? Marshal Ji really wants to attack Black Wind Valley? Black Wind Valley is impregnable and has more than 400,000 demon race guards, but Marshal Ji is only taking 300,000 soldiers to attack. Sigh, isn't Marshal Ji's decision a little rash? The generals whispered to each other, unable to accept this order for a moment. Ji Tianxing could not help but reveal a disdainful sneer when he saw that no one dared to step forward to accept the order despite the endless discussion. Ben Shuai was right. Those who volunteered just now can't wait to shrink their heads back into their stomachs now. The generals were all very embarrassed. All of them revealed looks of shame and indignation, but they could not refute. Xie Wudao was also worried when he saw this scene. He sighed inwardly. He had long expected this outcome, but there was nothing he could do about it. Ji Tianxing no longer humiliated the generals. he said solemnly. Ben Shuai only needs 3 generals to follow him, and 300,000 elite soldiers will be deployed. Those who follow Ben Shuai on the expedition will receive double the rewards after returning victorious. Of course, if you are afraid of death and are unwilling to go on the expedition, that's fine too. If this marshal were to attack Black Wind Valley alone, I would still be able to annihilate the Devil Army. However, when Ben Shuai conquers Black Wind Valley, he will leave the Celestial Overlook Pass to assist other battlefields. Ben Shuai disdains to be associated with people who are afraid of death. After saying that, Ji Tianxing swung his sleeves and strode towards the entrance of the main hall. Xie Wudao and more than 20 generals were shocked by his confidence and domineering aura. They were all dumbfounded and stood rooted to the ground. After a while, the crowd regained their senses and exclaimed in surprise. Are you sure? Marshal Ji wants to attack Black Wind Valley alone? This is crazy. Marshal Ji's confidence and domineering aura are unparalleled and shocking. Marshal Ji is right. He dares to attack Black Wind Valley alone, but we are timid and afraid of death. What a disgrace. I don't care. Even if I die on the battlefield, I will follow Marshal Ji and go crazy for once. Yes, Marshal Ji is not afraid of death. What are we afraid of? Chapter 2103. Ji Tianxing had just walked out of the meeting hall when a shout came from behind him. General Ji, please wait. He looked back and saw that 4 generals had followed him out. He stopped and looked at the 4 generals without saying a word. The 4 of them came before him and bowed respectfully. They said sincerely, General Ji, we are willing to follow you into battle. We will not regret it until we die. General Ji, we are willing to go to the battlefield with you. We will live and die together. General Ji, please grant us our wish. General Ji, please grant us our wish. We are willing to die for you. Ji Tianxing glanced at the 4 generals. They were all the generals who had stopped the demon army outside the Celestial Advent Pass. At the same time, the 4 of them had witnessed the process of him killing more than 300,000 demon army. He raised his eyebrows and said calmly, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, Tua Hai, and more than 20 other generals are hesitating. Why did you come along? You know that Ben Shuai is going to attack the Black Wind Valley. Are you not afraid of death? Wei Yu, who was the leader, smiled calmly and said firmly, General Ji, the 4 of us are ordinary people. Of course, we cherish our lives and are afraid of death. But we know that as generals of the Empire, we have the responsibility and obligation to protect the Empire's territory and defend the people against the demon army. So what if we are afraid of death? In the end, we can't lose our responsibility and integrity. Dying on the battlefield is the final destination for us. Moreover, with the wise General Ji leading us, we are willing to entrust our lives to General Ji. Ji Tianxing looked at Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, and Tua Hai and asked, Do you think so too? It's not too late to regret now. Ben Shuai will not blame you. The 3 generals shook their heads quickly and said firmly, General Ji, you don't have to test us anymore. We will follow General Ji to death. Seeing that their attitude was firm and unwavering, Ji Tianxing smiled with satisfaction. Very good. 10 days later, you will feel lucky and proud of your decision today. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were all stunned. They did not understand what he meant. However, Ji Tianxing did not explain. He waved his hand and ordered, What are you waiting for? Go and gather your men. Ben Shuai is about to set out. The 4 generals hurriedly cupped their hands in salute and said, Yes, sir, in unison. Then they turned around and strode away. Inside the meeting hall, over 20 generals looked at the backs of Wei Yu and the others as they left. They all revealed complicated expressions as they discussed secretly. Some people were filled with worry and anxiety, while others secretly felt regret and blamed themselves for their own hesitation and misgivings. There were also a few generals who had a vague premonition that they seemed to have missed the opportunity to soar and make a name for themselves in the world. Because of this, they felt extremely regretful. In a short 10 hours, Ji Tianxing led 400,000 elite soldiers and arrived at the Black Wind Valley outside the pass. The Black Wind Valley was located on a vast plain, more than 2,000 miles away from the Immortal Lin Pass. This was a valley that was more than 10,000 miles long. On both sides were undulating mountain ranges and mounds. The surface was covered with brown soil and sand. Black fog lingered in the valley. It was filled with poisonous miasma and demonic fog. All kinds of strange howls could be heard constantly. It was as frightening as the abyss of hell. Every time the north attacked, a pitch-black gust of wind would blow out from the valley. It carried a strange and vicious poison and permeated the entire wilderness. Every time this happened, the Immortal Lin Pass more than 2,000 miles away would activate its defensive array. Thousands of array masters would join forces to activate various arrays to defend against the poisonous gas in the Black Wind. The 400,000 soldiers arrived near the Black Wind Valley and stopped. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other three were clustered around Ji Tianxing. They looked at the Black Wind Valley in front of them and revealed a fearful expression. General Ji, you just said that you would gather the troops to attack. However, you haven't told us what your plan is? That's right, General Ji. The Black Wind Valley is easy to defend and difficult to attack. If we attack rashly, we will definitely suffer heavy casualties. Do you have a good plan? Everyone, don't worry. General Ji is so confident. He must have a good plan long ago. Ji Tianxing glanced at the four of them and said calmly, "What good plan? To deal with the remaining demons, we only need to fight them head-on. There is no need for schemes." Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were stunned. Their expressions became extremely strange. Are you kidding? General Ji, you must be joking? General Ji, you must not underestimate the enemy. The Black Wind Valley is heavily guarded. There are also many powerful blood gods. Even if a martial sage enters, he will most likely die. Ji Tianxing did not say much. He took out 8 talismans from his space ring and gave them to Wei Yu and the other 3. Each of them received 2 talismans. One was 5-colored and the other was as white as snow. They both contained shocking energy waves. The 4 generals were puzzled. They looked at Ji Tianxing and asked, "General Ji, what talismans are these?" Ji Tianxing said calmly, "These are talismans that Ben Shuai refined himself. The 5-colored one is the Heavenly Thunder Talisman and the white one is the Holy Light Talisman. Keep them well. Later, Ben Shuai will sneak into the Black Wind Valley alone and assassinate the generals and blood gods in the valley. When the Black Wind Valley is in chaos and the defensive formations and fortifications are destroyed, Ben Shuai will send you a signal. At that time, you will use these 2 talismans to blast open the defensive formations and lead the soldiers into the Black Wind Valley. You will be able to obtain a complete victory." Ji Tianxing said seriously and his tone was very certain. When the 4 generals heard this, their expressions changed drastically. They hurriedly tried to dissuade him. "General Ji, although you're powerful, you shouldn't put yourself in danger. It is too dangerous for you to sneak into the Black Wind Valley alone. This general is willing to accompany you." Ji Tianxing waved his hand disapprovingly and said calmly, "Other than the Devil Saint experts, no one can hurt Ben Shuai. Half a month ago, the last Devil Saint of the Devil race was also crippled by Ben Shuai. Now, no one can stop Ben Shuai's footsteps." The 4 generals were shocked. The more they thought about his words, the more they felt that it was inconceivable. Ban Yunshan hesitated for a moment and asked worriedly, "General Ji, can these 2 Heavenly Thunder Talismans and Holy Light Talismans really blast open the defensive formations of the Black Wind Valley?" Ji Tianxing only chuckled and did not answer. When his voice fell, his figure disappeared and flew towards the Black Wind Valley. The 4 generals looked at each other and hurriedly put away the 2 talismans. They led their soldiers and dispersed to carry out their mission. Half an hour later, the 4 generals each led 100,000 elite soldiers and laid in ambush around the Black Wind Valley. At this moment, the Black Wind Valley that was shrouded in black fog suddenly lit up with flames that soared into the sky. Dazzling silver starlight and heavenly thunder and lightning covered the sky. There was also a series of loud rumbling noises that reverberated in the wasteland. Chapter 2104. The originally peaceful Black Wind Valley was now in chaos. Dazzling magical power light constantly lit up in the valley, and deafening loud noises were heard. All kinds of heavenly fire, astral wind, heavenly thunder and star-divine fire poured down in the valley, creating destructive power that could destroy the world. Countless demon experts and blood gods flew to the sky above the valley, searching for traces of strong enemies. All kinds of screams, angry roars and curses gathered into a sound wave torrent that reverberated in the sky. Wei Yu, Xianxia and the rest were lying in ambush outside the Black Wind Valley, hundreds of miles away. No one could see the situation in the valley clearly, and they did not know what was going on. But looking at the earth-shattering momentum, everyone could guess that the battle in the Black Wind Valley must be very intense. Marshal Ji is indeed a god. He barged into the Black Wind Valley alone and created such a terrifying commotion. He barged into the demon nest alone and assassinated the generals and experts of the demon race amidst more than 400,000 demon race troops. Such strength and courage is rare in the world. Although Marshal Ji is in a dangerous situation, we cannot act rashly before he sends out the signal. As long as there is still movement in the Black Wind Valley, it means that Marshal Ji is still safe. If the movement stops, we must rush in to rescue Marshal Ji no matter what. I have a feeling that Marshal Ji can destroy half of the Black Wind Valley alone. When he sends out the signal, we will lead our troops in to clean up the mess. The four generals were calculating, and their hearts were filled with worry and anxiety. They only hoped that Ji Tianxing would quickly send out the signal. However, the fighting in the Black Wind Valley continued for an entire hour and did not stop. The four generals were burning with anxiety and wanted to rush into the Black Wind Valley several times. But they forced themselves to remain calm and continued to wait. Finally, a bright golden light lit up in the Black Wind Valley. That dazzling golden light pierced through the layers of black fog and demon chi, and rushed into the sky like fireworks before exploding. Swoosh! A golden dragon shadow as huge as a mountain appeared. It stretched out its 5 claws and displayed a divine and majestic aura. Seeing the golden dragon shadow appear, Wei Yu, Xianxia and the rest were overjoyed and hurriedly gave orders. Marshal Ji has finally sent out the signal. Quick! Everyone attack! Kill your way into Black Wind Valley and kill all the remaining demons. Leave none alive. Following the orders of the four generals, the 400,000 soldiers let out an earth-shattering roar as they waved their weapons and rushed toward the Black Wind Valley like a tide. Wei Yu, Xianxia, Ban Yunshan, and Tuahai were the first to rush into Black Wind Valley. A huge black fog barrier blocked their path. This was the defensive array of Black Wind Valley. The four of them obeyed Ji Tianxing's instructions and hurriedly took out the Heavenly Thunder Talisman and the Holy Light Talisman. They injected their mana into the talisman to activate it and threw it at the black fog barrier. Shwa! The Heavenly Thunder God Talisman burned, erupting with an incomparably violent energy fluctuation. A 5-colored pillar of divine lightning appeared and crashed viciously toward the black mist barrier with the power to destroy everything. Boom! The 10,000-foot-long 5-colored divine lightning struck the black fog barrier with a deafening roar of thunder. A huge hole was blasted in the indestructible black fog barrier on the spot. Dozens of cracks spread out in all directions. Immediately after, the Holy Light Talisman also burned and lit up with a holy white light that covered the sky. The Holy White Light's aura was not violent. It even made everyone feel refreshed, gentle, and warm. However, when the gigantic blazing white light beam hit the black fog barrier, a surprising reaction occurred. Holy white light burst forth, and as long as it came into contact with the black fog and devil chi, it would be purified without a trace. After a few breaths, a 10,000-foot wide gap appeared on the black fog barrier and was still expanding. The gap was clear and the black fog and demonic chi that filled the valley had all disappeared. The four generals and all the soldiers were pleasantly surprised when they saw this miraculous scene. They revealed expressions of disbelief. Soon, everyone came back to their senses. The four generals took the lead and led the 100,000 soldiers under their command into the Black Wind Valley in a grandiose manner. Everyone originally thought that there would definitely be a fierce battle that would be very tragic. The demon race garrison in Black Wind Valley would definitely form a battle formation and charge forward dauntlessly to stop their invasion. However, when the soldiers charged into Black Wind Valley, they all revealed stunned expressions. The scene in front of them also shocked everyone. They saw that the vast and enormous Black Wind Valley was filled with dilapidated walls, collapsed houses, and palaces. The demon race's barracks were actually destroyed. Fire and smoke rose everywhere, and the ground was covered with cracks and holes. Countless demon race soldiers, either in groups of a few hundred or in groups of a few thousand, ran in panic in Black Wind Valley, constantly roaring in anger, despair, and fear. Seeing this scene, the human soldiers were dumbfounded and only felt that it was inconceivable. Wuxia, Xianxia, and the other three were also confused. They all sent voice transmissions to inquire about the situation. What's going on? Even if the demon race's barracks were destroyed, they shouldn't be utterly defeated? It's too unbelievable. Is this still the cruel, bloodthirsty, and heartless demon race? Heavens! What did those demon race experience? How could they be destroyed to such a state? Everyone look at the sky. It seems like Marshal Ji is being besieged. The four generals and many commanders raised their heads to look at the sky. They saw that in the depths of Black Wind Valley, about 100 miles away in the sky, there were more than 10 people fighting. At a glance, they were all demon race generals and blood god sons who were crazily besieging a white figure. Although they were very far away, everyone could recognize that the white figure was Ji Tianxing. His clothes were full of bloodstains. Thus, Wuxia, Xianxia, and the other three decisively gave orders. All troops, listen to orders. Kill the demon race with all your might. Leave no one alive. Capture Black Wind Valley with the fastest speed and kill all the demon race. After the order was passed down, the 400,000 human soldiers immediately charged towards the demon race army under the leadership of many commanders. As for Wuxia, Xianxia, and Tuahai, they held their weapons and flew into the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. After 10 breaths, the four generals flew into the sky and rushed into the battlefield. They did their best to rescue Ji Tianxing. They used all their strength to wield their swords and sabers, releasing powerful magic arts to kill the dozen or so Devil Clan experts. However, those demon race generals and blood god sons were abnormally powerful. They fought for a long time and were not defeated. In the process, Ji Tianxing used thunderous means to kill 7 demon race generals and blood god sons. There were only 5 demon race experts left in the sky. They were all terrified and turned to flee in panic. Wuxia, Xianxia, and the other 3 were greatly relieved. Only then did they rush to Ji Tianxing's side. Chapter 2105. Previously, the 4 generals had seen Ji Tianxing being surrounded by many demons and covered in blood. They had thought that he was heavily injured and had been very worried. Only now did they know that he was not injured and that his body was stained with the blood of demons. The 4 generals were greatly relieved after the false alarm. At the same time, they felt ashamed and self-deprecating. I saw Marshal Ji kill more than 300,000 demons with my own eyes. I've already seen his unparalleled power. Why am I still so worried today? Alas, our knowledge is still too shallow. It's our first time following Marshal Ji on an expedition, yet we're so nervous. In the eyes of all the soldiers, Marshal Ji is creating a miracle by leading troops to attack Black Wind Valley and sneaking in alone to assassinate people. But to Marshal Ji, this is all very common. Otherwise, how could he be so calm and collected? Just as the 4 generals were thinking, Ji Tianxing killed another 5 fleeing demon generals. He flew back to the 4 generals and asked with a dignified expression, "The battlefield is dangerous and you can lose your lives at any time. Why are you in a daze? Do you want to die?" Wuxia, Xianxia, and the others immediately came back to their senses and hurriedly bowed to apologize and explain. "Marshal Ji, please calm your anger. We have failed in our duty. We have witnessed Marshal Ji's power once again and were impressed by Marshal Ji's style. We were deeply shocked and lost our composure on the battlefield. Marshal Ji, please calm your anger. We will immediately lead troops to encircle and eliminate the remaining demons. Ji Tianxing glanced at the four and said expressionlessly, "Stop flattering me. Ben Shuai doesn't buy it. Ben Shuai has already killed more than 100,000 soldiers in Black Wind Valley. Ben Shuai has also destroyed more than half of the defensive structures and formations. Ben Shuai has killed almost all the demon generals and blood gods above the Tribulation Realm. The remaining 300,000 demons are like headless flies. They are utterly defeated. The four of you are responsible for encircling and eliminating the remaining demons. You must end the battle in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, our soldiers will be infected by the demon chi and poisonous miasma if they stay for too long." Black Wind Valley was filled with devil chi and poisonous fog. Only experts above the Tribulation Realm could remain unaffected. If ordinary human soldiers were to stay in the poisonous fog and devil chi for a long time, their bodies would definitely rot and turn into blood, and they would die in pain. What was worse was that the disease was contagious. Once it spread in the barracks, it would cause a terrifying disaster. It was precisely because of this that Black Wind Valley could become a powerful defensive line for the demon army. When Ji Tianxing proposed to attack Black Wind Valley, the generals were hesitant and fearful. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other three hurriedly cupped their hands and bowed. Soon after, the four of them split up and commanded their soldiers to quickly encircle and annihilate the remaining demons. Ji Tianxing stood high up in the sky, surrounded by the poisonous fog and devil chi, and coldly stared at the valley. His divine sense spread out, enveloping a radius of 1,000 miles, monitoring every movement in the valley. At the same time, he crossed his hands and waved them, forming a mysterious incantation. He constantly shot out rays of sacred white light, scattering them in Black Wind Valley. The sacred white light scattered in the sky, and quickly expelled the poisonous fog and devil chi in the surroundings. In this way, the pressure on the human soldiers was greatly reduced. As time passed, the battle cries in Black Wind Valley gradually weakened, and the remaining demons became fewer and fewer. Ji Tianxing looked at the situation in the valley and estimated that the battle would end in another hour. But at this moment, his divine sense suddenly detected a trace of a strange aura. In the depths of the valley, 400 miles away from him, there was a weak aura of magic power. It was taking advantage of the chaos to escape underground, fleeing into the distance. Ji Tianxing immediately raised his eyebrows and flew away as fast as the aurora. He crossed the sky 15 miles with each step, and after 30 breaths, he arrived in the depths of the valley. The barracks in this area had long been reduced to ruins. Fires were burning everywhere, and black smoke billowed out. There were still 20 to 30,000 demons who were resisting stubbornly, resisting the encirclement of 80,000 human soldiers. The scene was very chaotic. Ji Tianxing ignored the two armies that were fighting. His divine sense probed into the depths of the ground and quickly captured that aura. It was a black sword shadow which was rapidly traveling underground and was about to escape the range of Black Wind Valley. Want to escape? Ji Tianxing murmured indifferently. His body turned into a golden light, and he immediately chased after it. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, he burrowed into the ground and chased after it with lightning speed. He had already mastered the 5 elements, and used the celestial chaos secret technique to merge with heaven and earth. Even if he was traveling underground with layers of rocks, it was as if he was walking on flat ground. His speed was unbelievably fast. In just 10 breaths, he had traveled 300 miles, and caught up with the Black Sword Shadow. The Black Sword Shadow also sensed his existence, and rushed out of the ground in a panic, and flew into the sky. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, Ji Tianxing also rushed out of the ground, and flew into the sky. One man, one sword, flew into the dusky sky at the same time, and appeared in the sky above the gray wasteland. This was the north of Black Wind Valley, and it was a few hundred miles away from Black Wind Valley. The Black Sword Shadow was very frightened, and it actually ignited with blazing white flames, and its speed increased by more than 3 times. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing was faster than it. Heaven capturing Dragon Claw. He let out a low roar, and with a wave of his hand, a huge golden dragon claw appeared and grabbed the black sword shadow. The black sword shadow struggled with all its might, but it could not break free from the dragon claw's shackles, and was immediately caught by Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing took a closer look, and only then did he realize that the black sword shadow was a half-meter-long black short sword. The short sword was a tribulation-grade magic treasure, and its shape was simple and strange, with a few array talismans carved on its surface. It was obvious that this was not a weapon of the demon race, but a magic treasure refined by humans. Most of the arrays on this sword focus on speed, and it's mainly used for flying. Ji Tianxing saw through the clues, and could not help but frown. He knew very well that the short sword could not fly on its own, and someone must be hiding in the sword to control it. Therefore, he released a violent magic power, and brutally broke the defensive array of the short sword. Then, his divine sense forced its way into the space inside the short sword, knocked out the person inside, and grabbed him out. Swoosh! A human male wearing a long black robe and a large cloak appeared in front of Ji Tianxing. This person was covered from head to toe, and his aura was very gloomy and cold. If one did not use their divine sense to check, no one would think that he was a human. Ji Tianxing held the short sword, lifted the large cloak, and saw an old, withered face. This human elder's body was withered, and his face was ugly, and his aura was as gloomy as a venomous snake's. Ji Tianxing sized him up, and released a wave of divine sense to wake him up. The old man gradually regained consciousness, and with a swoosh, he opened his eyes and stared at Ji Tianxing with a malicious gaze, but he pursed his lips and did not say a word. Ji Tianxing stared at him with a sharp gaze and said in a playful tone, "As a human martial monarch, you are on the same side as the demon race, and after being captured by me, you can still be so calm." Chapter 2106. The black-robed old man's reaction was originally very calm and indifferent. But when he heard Ji Tianxing's words, the corner of his eyes twitched, and a hint of fear flashed through his eyes. Obviously, Ji Tianxing relied on his powerful observation skills to determine so much information in an instant, which shocked him. The black-robed old man's change in expression naturally did not escape Ji Tianxing's eyes. He immediately revealed a playful sneer and asked again, "It seems that I guessed right. You do have a mission. With your strength at the 5th level of the tribulation-passing realm, you are a famous martial lord expert in the 3 divine kingdoms. Even in the demon army, you can be compared to the demon generals. However, I have never seen you make a move. You only wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape. This means that you are not working for the demon race, and there are other forces behind you." The black-robed old man remained silent. He even closed his eyes and tried his best to maintain the calmness of his divine soul, not allowing Ji Tianxing to pry into the truth. Ji Tianxing carefully observed him and the short sword. After a while, he continued, "You did not speak because you did not want to expose your accent. You dressed as a demon because you did not want to expose the flaws of your clothing style, so that I could not find out your origin. But don't forget that the humans of the 3 divine kingdoms have slight differences in body shape, facial features, hair, and bones. If I'm not wrong, you must be from the heaven and divine kingdom." His tone was cold and firm, containing strong confidence. The black-robed old man, who had been as calm as ice, suddenly trembled when he heard his last sentence. He suddenly opened his eyes and stared at Ji Tianxing with a malicious gaze. He grinned and sneered, "Ha!" As expected of the number 1 genius of the Luoshui divine kingdom, the greatest threat to the demon race. "Ji Tianxing, your confidence and arrogance are truly unimaginable. But unfortunately, you guessed wrong this time." The black-robed old man's voice was dry and hoarse, like 2 pieces of old bark rubbing against each other. It was very unpleasant to hear. At the same time, his accent clearly carried the flavor of the Luoshui divine kingdom, as if he was from an empire on the eastern coast. "You're finally willing to speak?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said in a playful tone, "Since you know who I am, you should know my methods. If he told the truth, he would suffer less physical pain. Of course, don't tell me you're from the Luoshui divine nation. This little trick is useless against me. The black-robed elder remained calm and sneered disdainfully. People who walk in the shadows only believe in darkness and sharp blades. They disdain to belong to any divine kingdom. Ji Tianxing frowned slightly and looked at him deeply. He then lowered his head to look at the black dagger in his hand. Darkness and blades? He vaguely guessed that there was something strange about this short sword. However, the short sword had the black-robed old man's soul imprint, and only the black-robed old man could control the short sword. Or, Ji Tianxing could kill the black-robed old man and wait for the soul imprint to dissipate before he could use this short sword. Ji Tianxing cast a spell with his left hand and was about to forcefully erase the soul imprint. The black-robed old man suddenly sneered, "Ha, if you forcefully erase the soul imprint, my soul will be damaged and I will lose my memory and become an idiot. At that time, you'll never know my identity or my secret. Anyway, I'm already in your hands and my life and death are in your hands. Why don't we make a deal? Spare my life and let me go. I'll tell you my origin and secrets." Ji Tianxing immediately stopped and looked coldly at the black-robed old man. "This is your only chance." After saying that, he handed the short sword to the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man took the short sword and said, as expected of Ji Tianxing, "You're wise and courageous. Unfortunately, you're too confident." Ha! When he looked up and laughed crazily, Ji Tianxing realized that something was wrong and immediately reached out to grab the short sword. However, it was too late. The mysterious black short sword had been detonated by the black-robed old man. Boom! With a deafening sound, the black dagger instantly shattered into pieces that filled the sky, bursting into a huge ball of black flames. The black flame had a strange attribute. It was an extremely rare dark flame. The pitch-black flames enveloped Ji Tianxing, and the violent impact sent him flying backwards on the spot. However, he was already prepared and used his powerful magic power to protect his body. He was not injured by the impact. Swoosh! He flew more than 10 miles before stopping in the sky. When the dark flame dissipated, he quickly flew back to his previous position. He saw that the black short sword had been shattered into countless pieces and scattered on the scorched earth. The black-robed old man was lying in a deep pit more than 10 miles away. Only half of his bloody body was left and his body was covered with a layer of dust. He lay motionless in the pit. His body was badly mutilated and he was no longer breathing. Ji Tianxing quickly flew to his side and used his divine sense to check. He found that the old man's soul had been shattered. The explosion of the short sword only injured his physical body. The shattering of his soul was because he had chosen to commit suicide. Ji Tianxing frowned and his face became as cold as ice. Damn it! How could there be such a crazy person who did not care about his life? This old man was a death warrior. He would rather die than reveal his identity. He even wanted to destroy the secret. Thinking of this, he suddenly thought of something. That's right. That short sword and the old man's soul were fused together. It was his natal magic weapon. Not only did he use the short sword to escape, there must be a secret in it. The short sword was destroyed by the explosion. However, the things in the space of the sword might not be completely destroyed. Therefore, Ji Tianxing quickly released his divine sense to cover the wasteland within 100 miles and carefully searched the ruins. After a few minutes, he found more than 10 pieces of fragments. These fragments were of different sizes. The big ones were the size of a fingernail and the small ones were only the size of a sesame seed. After careful inspection, Ji Tianxing found that 2 of them were fragments of the short sword and a few fragments of magic weapons. They were all useless. Only 2 fragments were valuable and attracted his attention. One of the dark brown metal fragments was the size of a fingernail. There were patterns engraved on the front and 2 incomplete seal characters on the north side. Ji Tianxing studied it for a while and recognized that it was the words shadow and blade. Shadow blade? Could it be the name of a force? This metal fragment is from the identity token? Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a while. He was not sure and checked the other fragment. This fragment was only the size of a sesame seed. It was a fragment of a jade slip used to transmit and record information. Under normal circumstances, after the jade slip is shattered, the information recorded in it will dissipate quickly. It will not dissipate immediately. There will be a process and a short period of time. This thought flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind. He quickly used his divine sense to explore the jade slip fragment. After a while, he read a message from the fragment. The plan has failed. The army has no leader. We must do something else. Chapter 2107. Ji Tianxing pondered with an indifferent expression. A golden flame surged out of his palm and burned the two fragments to ashes. He waved his hand, got up, and stepped into the sky, flying towards Black Wind Valley. Although there was only half a sentence left in the Jade Scroll, there was no beginning or end. But he combined all the information and gradually sorted out the situation. Originally, I thought that the demon army was so eager to attack the Luoshui Divine Kingdom because of the return of the ancestor demon god. It needs slaughter and war to recover its strength as soon as possible. Now it seems that things are more complicated than I thought. There are actually human forces involved in this war and colluding with the demons. Those who can work with Dark North Mountain are either super martial forces like the Broken Sky Alliance or the Three Divine Kingdoms. As for Ingren, I have never heard of this name. Unless he has the support of a super force behind him, then he has the right to add fuel to the fire. Although the appearance of the black-robed elder was just a small interlude, it did not have any impact on the Battle of Black Wind Valley. But through this, Ji Tianxing realized the complexity of the situation and buried a thorn in his heart. I have to be more careful in the future. Even if I expel the demon army, I can't let my guard down. Sooner or later, I will find out the force behind Ingren and see who is colluding with the demons. After a while, Ji Tianxing returned to Black Wind Valley. The battle was coming to an end. Only a few tens of thousands of demon soldiers were still stubbornly resisting, but they were quickly wiped out by the human army. The four generals ordered the soldiers to clean up the battlefield. They rushed to Ji Tianxing's side and excitedly reported the results of the battle. Reporting to General Ji, our army has achieved a complete victory in this battle. General Ji, we lost 60,000 soldiers, but killed more than 340,000 enemies and completely occupied Black Wind Valley. Ji Tianxing frowned and said calmly, "Wrong. We killed 450,000 enemies and completely wiped out the demons." Ban Yunshan was stunned and said with a puzzled face, "General Ji, that's not right. We only killed 340,000 demons, and you personally killed 110,000 demons. This is your military merit, we do not dare to claim it." Wei Yu and Yi Xianqing hurriedly nodded in agreement. "That's right. Commander Ji, you have the greatest merit. We accept this wholeheartedly. We will definitely report this to Commander Xie and the Saint Emperor. If Marshal Ji had not killed his way into the Black Wind Valley alone, how could we have achieved victory today? To tell you the truth, we've all picked up the merit with you. We're already ashamed to accept it, so how could we dare to think more?" Ji Tianxing waved his hand and chuckled. "Don't talk nonsense. Does Ben Shuai still need that bit of merit? The four of you are willing to risk your lives and follow Ben Shuai to attack Black Wind Valley. This is an additional reward for you. Don't forget that Ben Shuai said that the rewards will be doubled before we set off." Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were pleasantly surprised, but they were also ashamed and uneasy. Many thanks for Marshal Ji's grace, but this general's heart is uneasy. Marshal Ji, from now on, we will follow your lead. We are willing to go through fire and water for you. Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a dignified tone, "Don't decline anymore. This matter is settled. Return to the Celestial Overlook Pass." With that, he took the lead and stepped into the sky. His clothes fluttered as he flew towards the south. The four generals arranged the aftermath and quickly followed him back to the Celestial Overlook Pass. After an hour, the news of the victory in Black Wind Valley spread throughout the Celestial Overlook Pass. Not only Xie Wudao and the other 20 generals were shocked, but they also found it unbelievable. Even the million soldiers in the pass were shocked to the extreme. They found it hard to believe. When the 4 generals led the army back, the million soldiers had no choice but to accept this reality. In an instant, the entire celestial overlook pass was in an uproar. Everyone was immersed in shock and surprise as they discussed this matter excitedly. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, and the rest, as well as the 300,000 soldiers who returned in triumph, did not hide the details of the battle. Everyone was filled with pride as they recounted the events of the battle to others. They praised Ji Tianxing as if he was a god who had descended from the heavens and was extremely powerful. Ji Tianxing's fame and achievements once again shocked the entire celestial overlook pass. More than 2 million soldiers were filled with admiration and respect for him. One day later, Marshal Xie Wudao gathered all the generals and awarded them in front of the public square. All the soldiers who participated in the battle were rewarded with double the military merits. They were also praised by Xie Wudao in front of everyone. Not only did these people receive military honors, but they also received money. As such, the soldiers who participated in the battle became the focus of the entire scene. They were envied by the 2 million soldiers. After the award ceremony ended, Xie Wudao was busy with the aftermath of the battle. Of the soldiers who participated in the war, those who should be promoted were promoted, those who should be promoted were promoted, and those who should be compensated were compensated. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. Xie Wudao might not have much ability in the battle, but he was a rare expert in managing the overall situation and arranging the rear affairs. Ji Tianxing did not have the time to care about these matters. He left them all to Xie Wudao. He stayed in his residence to rest. At the same time, he studied the situation of the battle and the defensive arrangements and thought about his next move. Unknowingly, another day had passed. Xie Wudao had finished dealing with the rewards and compensation for the soldiers who participated in the battle. The bustling celestial overlook pass gradually calmed down. However, at this moment, an exciting news came from the marshal's palace. It ignited everyone's enthusiasm once again. Deputy Marshal Ji Tianxing announced that they would set off again in 2 days. This time, he would lead 500,000 soldiers. As for which stronghold or barracks they would attack, it was still a secret. When the million soldiers heard the news, they were so excited that they could not sleep. Their blood was burning. Countless soldiers rushed to the barracks of the commanders, requesting to participate in the battle and follow Ji Tianxing. The commanders were under pressure and could only rush to the general's residence overnight to ask for the soldiers' orders. However, when the commanders arrived at the general's residence, they found that the generals were long gone. It turned out that when the 20 over-generals heard the news, they all put down their work and rushed to the marshal's palace. In the marshal's palace, Ji Tianxing's bedroom was brightly lit. He sat in the study, brewing a cup of hot tea. He held a military book and read it quietly. Wei Yu stood by his side like a guard. His expression was respectful and strict. Outside the door of the sleeping chamber, more than 20 armored generals were gathered in groups of 3 to 5, discussing the matter of the expedition. They wanted to see Ji Tianxing and request to join the battle. However, the guards at the door stopped everyone and did not allow anyone to enter. The generals were noisy and discussed for a long time. However, Ji Tianxing did not appear. Half an hour later, in the middle of the night, only one person came to the gate. Everyone took a closer look and saw that it was General Wei Yu. Wei Yu looked at the anxious generals and said expressionlessly, "Marshal Ji is thinking about important military matters. Generals, please be quiet and do not make any noise." Chapter 2108. More than 20 generals had rushed over excitedly to see Ji Tianxing, but they were all blocked outside the door. After waiting for half an hour, he was already impatient and unable to wait any longer. Now that Wei Yu had finally appeared, he had reprimanded everyone and even wanted them to line up. The expressions of the generals immediately changed. They were rather dissatisfied and began to discuss secretly. "Damn it! Wei Yu is a general like us. Now that he has become Marshal Ji's confidant, he dares to reprimand us. Who asked us to ask for help? Even if Marshal Ji and Wei Yu give us a hard time, we have to endure it. Previously, when Marshal Ji wanted to attack Black Wind Valley, we all dissuaded and opposed it. Only Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the other two followed Marshal Ji to battle. If it was anyone else, they would treat Wei Yu as a trusted aide and would inevitably embarrass us. A general with a full beard said angrily, "Isn't this an obvious humiliation to us? I can't take this lying down. At most, I'll just return to the barracks and stay." Another middle-aged general quickly nodded in agreement and said with a smile, "Yes, yes, yes. How can you take this lying down? Quickly return to the barracks and rest." But the bearded general glared at him and said, "Do you think I'm stupid? If I return to the barracks to rest, you will have the chance to follow Marshal Ji to battle. As long as you can follow Marshal Ji to battle, it's like picking up military merits with your eyes closed. Furthermore, it's double the reward. Only a fool wouldn't go. If Marshal Ji wants to humiliate me, then humiliate me with all your might. As long as I can participate in the battle, even if Marshal Ji slaps me in public, I'm willing." The bearded general's words were unpleasant, but none of the generals present laughed at him. It was because everyone had the same thoughts and ideas. As long as they could follow Ji Tianxing to battle, even if they had to kneel in public, it was fine. Kneeling to a godly person like Ji Tianxing was just a form of worship. It was not shameful. If they could follow him to battle, they would definitely have outstanding military merits. Who wouldn't be tempted by the rewards? Although the generals had some complaints and discussed secretly, they all waited patiently. However, they were all patient. They quietly lined up in a long line and waited patiently. When Wei Yu saw that everyone had lined up, he revealed a playful smile and turned to enter the sleeping chamber. A moment later, he returned to the study and stood beside Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing asked without raising his head, "Ben Shuai only said that he would only bring along those who are sincere. You actually humiliated them like this. Aren't you afraid of arousing public anger?" Wei Yu smiled and cupped his hands. "General Ji, it is not that I acted on my own, but this is the only way to verify who is more sincere. Furthermore, this general is speaking up for you. Previously, when you wanted to lead the army into battle, they all made all sorts of excuses and prevaricated, as if they were afraid of death. After the great victory in the Black Wind Valley, now that you want to go to war, they are all licking their faces and asking to fight. This is really despicable. You are magnanimous and did not argue with them. However, this general feels that it's not worth it for you. That's why I purposely left them hanging so that they can reflect on themselves." Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Since you've already done so, let's do as you say." Wei Yu cupped his hands and bowed before taking his leave. Ji Tianxing read a book for half the night before returning to his room to meditate and cultivate. For the next 2 days, he did not show his face. He had been cultivating. As for the 20 or so generals, they had been waiting in line outside the gate. On the first day, the generals were resentful but could still wait patiently. However, on the second day, the news spread throughout the camp, causing the million soldiers to discuss animatedly. The generals felt that they had become a laughingstock and could not suppress their resentment and anger. One after another, some of them left. There were still a few generals who were indignant. They turned and ran to Xie Wudao to complain. There was no need to doubt the result. These generals did not please either side and were reprimanded by Xie Wudao. On the morning of the third day, it was time for Ji Tianxing to go to war. At this time, the 20 or so generals had basically all left. Only the last general was still standing outside the gate, waiting bitterly. He stood there for 2 days and 2 nights without moving a single step. Moreover, his eyes were closed and his expression was calm. No matter how angry the other generals were and how the soldiers in the camp mocked him behind his back, he turned a deaf ear. Finally, Ji Tianxing appeared when the first ray of light shone in the morning. He stepped out of the sleeping quarters with a refreshed expression and came to the gate. Looking at the figure at the gate, he said in a playful tone, "Ben Shuai thought that the generals could not bear the humiliation and had all left in anger. I did not expect that there would be a thick-skinned one who stayed. You, what is your name?" The middle-aged general in blue armor saluted with a solemn expression and said calmly, "This general, Sheng Pingji, greets Marshal Ji." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Ben Shuai said that you were thick-skinned, but you are still able to take it with equanimity. It is rare to see such indifference. I think you must be someone with a story, but Ben Shuai is not interested in your story. Go gather the troops under your command and gather them outside the pass. Get ready to set out." Xing Pingji originally thought that Ji Tianxing would ask about his experience, but he did not expect that Ji Tianxing was not interested at all. Marshal Ji is indeed not an ordinary person. This general is impressed. This general will take his leave. After he bowed, he left in satisfaction and went to prepare the army for war. After he left, Wei Yu came to Ji Tianxing's side and said in a low voice, "Marshal Ji, this General Xing Pingji has never been very sociable. He is very dull and reserved. Among all the generals, he is the most inconspicuous." Without waiting for him to finish, Ji Tianxing waved his hand and interrupted, "Ben Shuai is only a passerby. He is only responsible for leading you to victory and driving away the demon army. As for the stories and experiences of the soldiers, Ben Shuai is not interested. In half a month, Ben Shuai will leave the Celestial Overlook Pass and head to the Qiang Empire." Wei Yu was startled and showed a look of deep regret. But he felt relieved after thinking for a while. He quickly adjusted his mentality and prepared the troops for war. Half an hour later, the 500,000 soldiers gathered outside the Celestial Overlook Pass and set off valiantly. The 5 generals leading the troops were Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, Tua Hai, and Xing Pingji, who had just joined. This time, Ji Tianxing's target was the west camp of the demon army. The west camp was at the edge of the wilderness and was thousands of miles away from the Celestial Overlook Pass. There were millions of soldiers stationed there and the defense was extremely tight. After the soldiers set off, they found out that their target was actually the west camp. They were all shocked and worried. Using 500,000 soldiers to attack the millions of heavily guarded soldiers was undoubtedly like throwing an egg against a rock and seeking their own death. Fortunately, the leader was Ji Tianxing, the legendary killing god. If Xie Wudao was the leader, the soldiers would have been in an uproar and even collapsed and disbanded. This mission was unusual. Ji Tianxing also changed his strategy. He used the world in the Sword of Burial of Heaven to bring 5 generals and more than 20 commanders to infiltrate the west camp of the demon army. Chapter 2109. This was an unprecedented and almost suicidal war. An army of 500,000 lay in ambush outside the western camp, waiting for Ji Tianxing's order to attack. Ji Tianxing used the Sword of Burial of Heaven to bring 5 generals and 20-some commanders into the western camp. This camp was surrounded by mountains, and 300 li to the east was a vast plain. An army of more than 1 million demons occupied a valley of 300 li in circumference. At a glance, one could see that the valley was densely packed with black stone houses and palaces. Countless minarets and watchtowers stood in the military camp. There were also many scouts in blood-red armor patrolling in the sky, monitoring the movements in the surroundings. The skull and blood banner in the camp fluttered in the wind, and the air was filled with thick demonic mist and black qi. A massive fortress of 300 li in circumference enveloped the entire valley, operating day and night. Ji Tianxing used a secret technique to pass through the black fortress and enter the camp. He was in no hurry to assassinate the demon generals. First, he hid in the shadows and observed the defensive array. He quickly thought of a way to break it and found several weak points. Then he ordered the 5 generals in the sword world to prepare their talismans. In a little while, when he wreaked havoc in the camp, the 5 generals would use this chance to destroy the defensive array. In addition, the 20-some commanders would each have their own mission to destroy the defensive fortifications and arrays in the camp. 2 hours later, Ji Tianxing circled around the camp and made proper arrangements for the 5 generals and the 20 or so commanders. Everyone used invisibility talismans to hide their tracks and qi, hiding in different locations and nodes, waiting for the operation to begin. Ji Tianxing left alone, making his way to the center of the camp, preparing to assassinate the demon generals and experts. But just as he made his way to the center of the camp and prepared to infiltrate a massive palace, a horn sounded. At this moment, the sound of a horn came from the camp. A scout had sent out a warning signal. The entire demon camp was alarmed. Countless armored and sword-wielding scouts flew into the air, seething with killing intent, and began to search the area. On the ground, one demon army after another rapidly gathered and set off. In a short span of 100 breaths, 400,000 demons had split into 4 armies and arrived at the edges of the camp. They had all activated their defensive fortifications and formations, and were in a defensive posture, waiting for the enemy to come. The entire demon camp immediately entered a state of combat readiness, like a fully drawn bow, ready to explode with astounding power at any moment. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing immediately understood. The soldiers lying in ambush around the camp must have been discovered by the demon scouts, causing the demon army to be on guard. Damn it! The entire camp is on alert. Even if I create chaos, the army may not be able to charge in. Ji Tianxing murmured with a solemn expression. Worry flashed across his eyes. At the same time, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others who were hiding in the surroundings of the camp and waiting for an opportunity to destroy the grand formation were burning with anxiety and worry to the extreme. The situation was extremely dangerous. If they were not careful, the 500,000-strong army led by Ji Tianxing would be buried here. Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a moment, then resolutely decided to carry out the original plan. He remained invisible and quietly entered the palace, searching for traces of the demon generals. In his opinion, the demon generals would definitely hold an emergency meeting when they learned that the human army outside the camp had been discovered. The facts proved that he had guessed correctly. When he sneaked into the second floor of the palace, he detected the auras of more than a dozen experts in a heavily guarded secret room. The secret room had a defensive array, and there were more than 20 elite guards around it. Ji Tianxing quietly crept to the door of the secret room to investigate the situation inside. He saw 16 Tribulation Transcendence Realm demon experts sitting around a long stone table. These were all demon generals. Most of them wore battle armor, and a few wore black robes. The leader was a middle-aged demon man who was as strong as an iron tower and looked like an old bear. This person's strength had reached the 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendence Realm. He was Demon Lord Warsoul, one of the top 10 of the 36 demon lords. At the same time, he was also the main general of the West Camp. The strength of the other 15 demon generals was between the 2nd and 5th level of the Tribulation Transcendence Realm. Just as Ji Tianxing expected, more than a dozen demon generals had secretly gathered to discuss countermeasures. Just now, the scouts reported that the human army has been discovered outside the camp. There are at least 400,000 of them. Are the humans crazy? How dare they attack us with only 400,000 soldiers? It must be Ji Tianxing. Only a lunatic would dare to do such a crazy thing. He is digging his own grave. Let's defend with all our strength. I want to see how the 400,000 human army can kill their way into the camp. Everyone, don't forget Ji Tianxing's usual tricks. He will definitely sneak into the camp first to create a disaster and assassinate us and the Blood God. Previously, when he saved the White Frost Empire, he did this and won all the battles without a single defeat. It is said that the Azura Demon Saint and Shui Pao Patriarch were defeated by Ji Tianxing. His strength has already reached the Saint Realm. Even if we join forces, we can't defeat him. We are no match for him, but does he dare to break into the camp alone and face millions of soldiers? More than a dozen demon generals argued endlessly. Some advocated to defend with all their strength, while others suggested to ambush Ji Tianxing together. In a short time, they could not reach a consensus. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing quietly released the power of his divine soul. It turned into more than 20 invisible arrows and attacked the guards around the secret chamber. Swish, swish. In the next moment, more than 20 demon guards were all hit by the arrows. Their divine souls were shattered on the spot, and they died instantly. Their corpses were cut off and slowly fell to the ground, making slight bumping sounds. Even so, some of the demon generals in the secret chamber were alarmed. One of the demon generals suddenly stood up and shouted in a low voice, "Something is happening." More than a dozen demon generals quieted down and released their divine senses to check the situation outside the secret chamber. Seeing that more than 20 guards were dead, everyone's expression changed drastically, and they all let out exclamations and shouts. "Enemy attack! It's Ji Tianxing! It must be him! Don't panic, everyone! Let's join forces to deal with him. We can definitely hold him back." In a moment, more than a dozen demon generals took out their weapons and magic treasures. They were on high alert and vigilant. Ji Tianxing sneered and said in a low voice, "All of you are here. It saves me the trouble of looking for you. Now I will send all of you to hell." As he spoke, he held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed at the door of the secret chamber. Heavenly Dragon Slash. Following Ji Tianxing's cold shout, a dazzling golden light lit up behind him, and a soaring golden dragon's shadow appeared. The five-clawed golden dragon let out a high-pitched dragon roar. The sword of burial of heaven also slashed out a giant golden sword that was 100 meters long and slashed at the black secret chamber. Chapter 21:10. A thunderous sound exploded in the depths of the palace. At that moment, the defensive array of the secret room was destroyed by the giant golden sword. The sturdy black stone secret room was also split in half by the giant sword, and shattered stones flew everywhere. A deafening sound spread throughout the entire devil race's camp. The destructive shockwave instantly destroyed the entire palace, causing it to collapse into ruins. The entire camp began to tremble, and cracks began to appear on the ground. In the dust, Ji Tianxing, wrapped in golden light, soared into the sky. Celestial dragon tyrant body. He roared, and a sacred golden light surged out of his body. His body immediately became a dozen times larger. In a flash, he became a 30-meter-tall golden armored giant, exuding a violent and domineering aura. The golden armor on the surface of his body was made up of hundreds of dragon scales. It looked very mighty and shocking. At the same time, his defense, strength, and speed had increased by more than 5 times. He stood proudly above the ruins, holding the giant burial of heaven sword in his right hand. He pointed it at the ground and let out an earth-shaking roar. "Today I, Ji Tianxing, will kill 1,000,000 demons and teach North Underworld Mountain an unforgettable lesson." His voice was like rolling thunder, reverberating in the sky above the west camp, shaking the eardrums of every demon. Countless people looked up at the sky, glaring at him and roaring angrily. In the ruins under Ji Tianxing's feet, a scarlet demon light lit up again, and there was a cracking sound. Demon Monarch War Soul and the 6 demon generals pushed aside the rubble in a sorry state and staggered out. The sword just now had killed several demon generals on the spot. But Demon Monarch War Soul and the 6 demon generals were only seriously injured and did not die on the spot. The 7 of them were covered in blood, and they were severely injured. After rushing out of the ruins, they did not dare to attack Ji Tianxing at all, and immediately scattered and fled. But Ji Tianxing's left palm struck out 5-colored divine lightning, and his right hand swung the sword 49 times. Bush, bush, bush. 49 silver sword lights blossomed like lotuses and struck the 6 demon generals. The 6 demon generals were killed on the spot by the sword light. Their corpses turned into minced meat and blood, and their divine souls were also shattered. At the same time, the 5-colored divine lightning struck Demon Monarch Warsoul, turning him into a charred corpse. His corpse fell from the sky and smashed into a palace, shattering into a pile of debris. Demon Monarch Warsoul was also killed by the 5-colored divine lightning. Ji Tianxing raised his head and looked around. He saw that the sky was filled with the figures of the devil race experts, who were rushing over to kill him like a tide. In the black fog not far away, there were a few invisible blood gods illusions sneaking over, preparing to launch a sneak attack. On the ground, Tens of thousands of demon soldiers had gathered into 9 square formations. They were controlling the demon Dao formations and releasing destructive attacks. In an instant, the sky was filled with layers of demonic shadows and murderous auras. Countless rays of bloody light, demonic light, and magical light flooded over like a flood. Ji Tianxing fell into a tight encirclement and was about to be drowned out by the tens of thousands of devil soldiers. However, he did not panic in the face of danger. His expression did not change. He ignored all the attacks. His left hand formed a seal and his right hand waved the sword of burial of heaven, using his trump card. Unstoppable heavenly lightning. Under his control, all the lightning energy within a radius of 20,000 miles was gathered together. Terrifying heavenly lightning also fell from the 9 heavens. Hundreds of heavenly thunder light pillars struck down from the sky. The dazzling lightning illuminated the entire camp. Boom, boom, boom. The lightning poured down from the sky, covering a radius of 50 miles and exploding with deafening sounds. With Ji Tianxing as the center, the area within 50 miles became a sea of lightning. The magical attacks of tens of thousands of devil soldiers were all shattered by the lightning. Countless houses and buildings were blasted into smithereens, and the ground was scorched. Batch after batch of devil soldiers were struck into charcoal and fell to the ground. It was as if doomsday had arrived, and the world was about to be destroyed. Except for Ji Tianxing, no one could withstand such a terrifying heavenly lightning bombardment. After a full 10 breaths, the earth-shattering sounds gradually dissipated. The lightning and smoke that pervaded the camp also gradually disappeared. Ji Tianxing's figure appeared in the sky once again. He was 10 feet tall, shining with golden light, and exuding a mighty and sacred aura. The camp under his feet had become scorched earth, and all that could be seen were ruins. The dark and smoking ground was covered with deep pits and cracks, and there were broken walls and black ashes everywhere. Not only were the tens of thousands of devil soldiers that besieged him killed, but even the devil soldiers that were closer to him were also killed. There were also tens of thousands of devil soldiers who were affected by the power of the heavenly lightning bombardment. It was a scene of heavy casualties. For a moment, the entire devil camp was silent. Hundreds of thousands of people were horrified. They stared at the sky, dumbfounded, and stared at Ji Tianxing. Their purple and blood-red eyes were filled with unparalleled terror and fear. Such an unkillable guy could trigger the power of the heavenly lightning. He was simply a killing machine on the battlefield, an absolute killing god. Every devil felt a strong sense of powerlessness from the bottom of their hearts. They could do nothing to Ji Tianxing, but Ji Tianxing could slaughter them wantonly. This was simply too sullen, making people vomit blood in anger. After a moment of silence, the devil soldiers all around all let out roars of grief and indignation, cursing wildly. There were even many experts and warriors who were not afraid of death, charging over dauntlessly. Like a black wave, they drowned Ji Tianxing's figure. Ji Tianxing's left hand brandished a fist, and his right hand brandished a sword, fighting fiercely in the crowd. Bam bam bam. Each fist light and palm shadow would smash a pile of devils into pieces, splattering minced meat and blood all over the sky. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The burial of heaven sword scattered sword light all over the sky. Sometimes it formed a fierce sword array, sometimes it condensed into brilliant starlight, and sometimes it turned into an ancient divine beast, bursting with terrifying power. But any devil that was swept by the sword light could not escape the fate of being smashed to pieces. Tens of thousands of devil experts besieged Ji Tianxing, but no one could block one of his moves. And the attacks released by the devil experts were very difficult to hit Ji Tianxing. He basically dodged all of them. Even if there were some magical attacks that did hit him, it was like scratching an itch, not causing him any injury. Ji Tianxing fought fiercely in the sky, like a fierce tiger in a flock of sheep, sweeping everything in his path, unparalleled in his slaughter. In a short quarter of an hour, he actually killed nearly 200,000 devils. Of the remaining 700,000 devils, 400,000 were guarding the 4 directions of the camp. The other 300,000 were thinking of ways to deal with Ji Tianxing, even forming battle formations to besiege him. But these were all useless. Chapter 2111. Although Ji Tianxing wasn't a martial saint, he had defeated 95% of the martial saint experts. Although he still couldn't defeat an 8th stage realm martial saint and above. But in terms of massacring 1,000,000 demons, even a 9th stage realm martial saint couldn't be compared to him. Because he had grasped an ultimate skill which didn't belong to this realm and didn't belong to this world. Right from the start, this 1 against 1,000,000 war was a one-sided massacre. What was unbelievable and laughable was that it was Ji Tianxing who massacred 1,000,000 demons alone. He rampaged through the demons' campsite and massacred wantonly, as though he was a steel giant dealing with ants all over the ground. Every move he made and every move he casually executed was enough to crush numerous ants to death. The ants on the ground tried their best, but they weren't able to hurt him at all. Unknowingly, 1 hour had passed. The west campsite had sunk into complete chaos. The barracks, palaces and fortifications within a radius of 300 miles had all been destroyed by Ji Tianxing. This entire region had turned into ruins and there wasn't a single intact building. What entered his eyes was scorched earth and ruins, deep pits and ravines. At least 400,000 demon soldiers had died under his sword, turning into dregs and dust. He had long been soaked in demon blood and his white robe had turned into a wet purple robe while his black hair had turned into red hair. Even the pitch-black and icy cold burial of Heaven's Sword was stained with a layer of blood. The hundreds of thousands of demons who were lucky enough to survive were terrified to the extreme and didn't dare to lay a hand on Ji Tianxing anymore. Everyone's impression and feeling towards Ji Tianxing was only left with one word: killing God. Only these 2 words could describe his unparalleled ferocity. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Xing Pingzhi and the others had been lying in ambush at the periphery of the campsite. From the start of Ji Tianxing's massacre until now, for an entire hour, everyone was on tenterhooks and extremely nervous. There were several times when everyone almost couldn't help but want to take action to save Ji Tianxing. After all, Ji Tianxing was facing a 100,000-strong army alone and no matter how they looked at it, he would definitely die. However, Ji Tianxing was safe and sound. Everyone suppressed their impulses and continued to wait for the signal. This 1 hour was very short for Ji Tianxing. To Yi Xianqing, Wei Yu and the others, it was exceptionally long and torturous. Finally, Ji Tianxing saw that the time was ripe. He waved his palm and shot out a dazzling golden light. Shwa! The golden light flew into the sky and immediately turned into a golden dragon that was over 3,000 meters long. It raised its head and let out an earth-shattering dragon roar. Roar! The divine might of the golden dragon was clearly displayed. This was the signal that Ji Tianxing and the generals had agreed upon. Since the signal had been sent out, it meant that the time had come. Without any hesitation, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others immediately ignited the talismans in their hands. In the next moment, dozens of divine thunder talismans and divine light talismans exploded under the defensive formation around the camp. Boom, 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 boom. With the deafening explosion, dazzling lightning and divine white light immediately illuminated the entire camp. The dark sky within a radius of a few hundred miles became dazzling. The light was so dazzling that people could not open their eyes. The terrifying explosion not only brought about loud sounds and dazzling light, but also astonishing destructive power. The defensive formation around the camp was immediately blasted with more than a dozen holes and gaps. The entire formation shook violently, and many cracks appeared on its surface. But this was only the beginning of the destruction and disaster. Ji Tianxing had distributed more than 100 talismans to the generals. The 5 generals and more than 20 generals followed closely behind and released the star talismans. Boom, 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 boom. There was another earth-shattering explosion around the camp. The silver light of the stars soared into the sky, like the bright moon in the sky. The brilliant star divine fire tore open the gap in the defensive formation and expanded it by several times. Tens of thousands of devil soldiers guarding the gap were also engulfed by the star divine fire and burned to ashes on the spot. After this round of bombardment, The defensive grand formation, which was already broken, became riddled with holes and extremely tattered. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others had completed their mission. They immediately sent out the signal and ordered the army outside the camp to attack. In the next moment, the 500,000 human soldiers lying in ambush outside the camp let out shocking battle cries and surged towards the demon camp like a tide. The human army had finally attacked. The final battle had arrived. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others firmly guarded the gap in the defensive formation and did their best to kill the demon soldiers that came to stop them. Although there were only 20 or so of them, and it was impossible for them to stop the charge of tens of thousands of soldiers, they needed to buy time. However, what they needed to do was to buy time. In just 100 breaths of time, the human army would be able to break into the camp. Fierce battles continued to take place. The 20 or so human generals were besieged by large numbers of demon soldiers and suffered destructive blows. They were quickly wounded by the demon soldiers. Their bodies were covered in blood, and their arms and legs were even cut off. But they stubbornly held on with their strong willpower. Finally, 100 breaths of time was up. The 500,000 human soldiers successfully passed through the gap in the formation and charged into the demon camp. When the two armies met, they immediately engaged in the fiercest battle. At the same time, Ji Tianxing, deep in the camp, increased the pace of his attack. He summoned Lan Kuan, forefather Sanju, and the Golden Mountain King to charge with him and slaughter the demon soldiers on the ground. Lan Kuan was as large as a mountain. It sprayed out icy flames and rampaged across the battlefield. Forefather Sanju turned into a giant tree that was 10,000 zhang tall. He waved his 100,000 branches and swept through everything like sharp swords. He pushed forward. Everywhere he passed, all obstacles were flattened. No matter if it was the broken walls, the fortifications, or the bodies of the demon soldiers, they were all crushed to pieces. The Golden Mountain King roared excitedly. He swung his enormous golden hammer and smashed piles of demon soldiers. Each time the hammer smashed down, a deep pit would be left in the ground. The bottom of the pit was filled with demon corpses. His courageous charge was more like a game of whack-a-mole. As time passed, the casualties of the demon army increased. The scales of victory tilted in favor of the humans and gradually stabilized. This great battle that shook the heavens and earth continued for an entire day. Only in the middle of the night did the battle come to an end. All of the western camp had been completely destroyed. It had been flattened by the shock waves of the battle. The million-strong demon army had been completely wiped out. Only 20,000 remained and they had fled in all directions. Of the 500,000 human soldiers, only 120,000 had died. The 5 generals were all heavily wounded. Of the 20-plus commanders, 5 had died in battle. While this loss seemed very heavy, compared to the achievement of destroying the million-strong demon army, this was an inconceivable victory. After the battle ended, the hundreds of thousands of human soldiers raised their weapons and cheered at the top of their lungs. Marshal Ji is mighty. The god of death is invincible. With Marshal Ji leading the army, our race will win. Similar cheers and shouts erupted like a mountain torrent, reverberating endlessly between the heavens and the earth, shaking one's eardrums. Chapter 21:12. The soldiers only knew that this battle was a complete victory. Ji Tianxing had personally killed 400,000 demons. His reputation as the Azura would spread throughout the world. Everyone was ecstatic and they admired Ji Tianxing to the extreme. Only Ji Tianxing knew that he had gained more than that. After this battle, not only had his prestige reached the peak, his strength had also reached the peak after being tempered by killing. He was only a step away from breaking through to the martial sage realm. He could clearly feel that his strength had reached a critical point and he could break through to the martial sage realm at any time. It's a pity that the battle ended so quickly. I wish that a demon sage would appear and fight with me for 3,000 rounds. In that case, I would definitely be able to break through to the martial sage realm in the midst of the battle. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky and looked down at the battlefield as he muttered regretfully. At that moment, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Xing Pingji and the rest flew to his side. The 5 generals were in a sorry state. Their armors were shattered, and their bodies were covered in blood and wounds. Their helmets were broken and their hair was messy. Their faces were covered in blood. Both Ban Yunshan and Tu Hai had lost an arm and a leg. Their injuries were even more severe. However, the 5 of them were excited and emotional. "General Ji, we have won the battle." Wei Yu cupped his fists towards Ji Tianxing and reported in a sonorous tone, "This general has already sent out 50,000 elite troops to pursue and kill the fleeing devils." Yi Xianqing bowed respectfully and said excitedly, "General Ji, we have used 500,000 soldiers to kill 1,000,000 demons. This is a miracle that only happens once in 100 years. It is a battle achievement that will shock the world." Xing Pingji's tone was also very excited. His eyes were shining as he said, "Among the 1,000,000 devils, 400,000 were killed by Marshal Ji. The name of the Azura is terrifying. After this battle, General Ji's name will spread throughout the world and shock the world." Although everyone was praising him, Ji Tianxing was very calm. He waved his hand and said, "First, report the casualties. Quickly comfort the injured soldiers and deal with the aftermath. Also, all of you are seriously injured. Quickly return to the Celestial Lin Pass to recuperate." Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the rest cupped their fists to show that they understood. After an hour, the battlefield was cleaned up. Ji Tianxing and the other generals led 380,000 soldiers back to the Celestial Lin Pass. Ji Tianxing and a few other generals were flying in the sky as the army advanced on the wasteland in a grandiose manner. Yi Xuanqing's face was full of doubts. After hesitating for a long time, he could not help but ask the question in his heart. "General Ji, when we attacked the West Camp, I was worried about the demons' camp." The demon race had a total of 3 military camps. Apart from the Western camp, there was also the Northern camp and the Eastern camp. The 3 camps were only half a day's distance. When we attacked the West camp, the other 2 camps must have received the news. Why didn't they send reinforcements? Hearing Yi Xuanqing's question, Wei Yu, Xing Pingji, and the others quickly nodded in agreement. Obviously, they also had the same question. Ji Tianxing looked at them and explained calmly, "Firstly, even if the other 2 camps receive the news, they would secretly laugh at us and think that we are seeking our own deaths. How can a mere 500,000 soldiers attack the West camp with 1,000,000 soldiers? Secondly, after the army set out, I also sent out 40,000 scouts to move around the 2 camps and keep a close watch on them. The generals of the 2 camps are not stupid. They would not dare to act rashly." Hearing his words, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the rest were suddenly enlightened. No wonder. General Ji was already prepared and made arrangements in advance. 40,000 scouts. That's 4 times the usual number of soldiers. All the scouts were sent out and loitering outside the 2 camps. This is to tell them not to act rashly. If they send reinforcements to the West camp, the Celestial Lin Pass will send a large army to stop them. I didn't expect the situation to be under General Ji's control. If General Yi did not ask, we would not have thought of this. No wonder there is a rumor in the north that General Ji is the one who understands the demons the best. It seems like it is true. Everyone chatted and discussed along the way. Unknowingly, they had returned to the Celestial Lin Pass. Before the army reached the Celestial Lin Pass, the news of victory had been sent back. When the army entered the Celestial Lin Pass, the pass was filled with cheers and excitement. No one expected that Ji Tianxing would lead the army to attack the West camp. The most unbelievable thing was that he actually won. The soldiers who returned in triumph were all excited and proud. They enjoyed the glory and praise of the brave. The soldiers who stayed behind to guard the pass could only be envious and jealous. They discussed and asked about the battle. For the entire day, the Celestial Lin Pass was not quiet. On the second day, Xie Wudao gathered all the generals and held a commendation ceremony in the square. The soldiers who participated in the battle had made such great contributions. Of course, they would be rewarded handsomely. What's more, these soldiers had followed Ji Tianxing into battle and received double the rewards. Even the soldiers who died or were injured in the battle received double the compensation. After the news spread, the soldiers who participated in the battle became the target of everyone's jealousy. When the 20 generals who stayed behind to guard the pass saw Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others get promoted and rewarded again after a few days, they were so jealous that their eyes turned red. Especially Xing Pingji, who was the target of their jealousy. Previously, everyone lined up outside Ji Tianxing's door and requested to go to battle. Everyone could not bear the humiliation and left dejectedly. Only Xing Pingji was thick-skinned. He pestered Ji Tianxing and followed the army to battle. And now, he had become one of the 5 meritorious officials. He enjoyed the glory of bravery and was promoted and rewarded in front of everyone. Compared to the limitless glory now, his previous humiliation was not even worth mentioning. The 20 generals regretted it so much that their intestines turned green. They only hated themselves for not being thick-skinned enough. If they could be as shameless as Xing Pingji, they would be the ones receiving commendations, being conferred titles, and receiving double the military merits. In a short 3 days, the news of Ji Tianxing annihilating the million-strong demon army spread throughout the northern battlefield. The people of the Changlong Empire were wild with excitement. They were only waiting for Ji Tianxing to expel the demon army and they could return to their homeland. The people of the Red Sun Empire were full of anticipation. They only hoped that Ji Tianxing would save them as soon as possible. Only the people of the White Frost Empire were the calmest. After all, they were numb to Ji Tianxing's legendary deeds. Even if someone said that Ji Tianxing poked a hole in the sky, they would accept it calmly. 3 days later, Ji Tianxing set off again. This time, he still brought Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other 3. He only led an army of 400,000 to attack a fortress. Many generals found Xie Wudao and begged him by all means, wanting to follow Ji Tianxing to battle. But Ji Tianxing said that Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were reliable. They were all people he was used to using. He did not want to change to other generals. When he said this, all the generals felt despair and helplessness. They only hated that they were blind and did not follow Ji Tianxing decisively. Chapter 21:13. In half a month, Ji Tianxing went to battle 4 times. Every time, he brought Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others to battle, and the result was a complete victory. Even though tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of soldiers would die in every battle. After 4 consecutive battles, more than half of the soldiers under the general's command had been killed. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, asked Xie Wudao to transfer soldiers from the other generals to replenish the numbers. Anyway, he wanted to ensure that the general's subordinates were always at full strength. The other generals did not have any battles to fight and were idling in the Linxian Pass all day. Now that their soldiers were divided, how could they let it go? They all ran to find Xie Wudao to reason with them. The group of people was in an uproar and were full of resentment. Xie Wudao had a headache. Even if he used the authority of a general, he could not suppress the generals. Helpless, he could only think of a way. He publicly posted a notice in the Linxian Pass to recruit soldiers to join Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others. After the news was announced, the soldiers guarding the Linxian Pass were in an uproar. In just an hour, tens of thousands of people gathered in the square and enthusiastically responded to Xie Wudao's summons. After all, everyone knew that if they joined Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others, they would be able to follow Ji Tianxing to attack the strongholds and camps of the demon race and gain merits. Most importantly, Ji Tianxing was victorious in every battle and had never lost. After the victory, the rewards that the soldiers received were also doubled. All along, the soldiers of the Linxian Pass were very envious and jealous. Now that there was an opportunity in front of them, even a fool would know to fight for it. The problem was solved. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other subordinates could recover to 100,000 before each battle. The soldiers also joined voluntarily, and the other generals had nothing to say. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Ji Tianxing won 4 battles and captured 2 strongholds, as well as the north and east barracks. At least 5 million demons lost their lives in these 4 wars. Ji Tianxing had killed as many as 500,000 devils with his own hands. The demon army was completely routed. Only about 400,000 were left. They retreated from the celestial overlook mountain pass and fled to the north. This time, Ji Tianxing did not have the intention to go into battle. He left the task of chasing after the remaining soldiers to Xie Wudao and the other generals. It was because he had received a communication jade slip last night. It was a black communication jade slip. It came from the north and carried a faint demonic aura. Without a doubt, it was Jiku who had sent him a message. For the past 2 years, regardless of whether there was any important information, Jiku would send him a message every month. This had already become a promise between the two, regardless of rain or shine. There wasn't much content in the jade slip, only 2 short sentences. However, it made Ji Tianxing frown and ponder for a long time. The demon race's holy city and Beiming Palace have been destroyed. They are currently recuperating. They have lost many battles in the north. The demon army is already thinking of retreating. They might retreat soon. Ji Tianxing sat alone in the secret chamber. He held the communication jade slip in his hand and pondered for a long time. The demon race's holy city was destroyed by Luo Shui's clone. The ancestor demon god and the 2 great demon sages were severely injured by Luo Shui's clone. The demon army's vitality was greatly damaged. They can only recuperate. Now that they are losing in the north, it is natural for them to retreat. However, the demon army still has the upper hand in the Scarlet Sun Empire. After the second demon sage Xianxia escaped, he must be in the Scarlet Sun Empire. Why are they in a hurry to retreat? I have to hurry to the Scarlet Sun Empire and kill Xianxia while he is severely injured. I can't let him retreat to Beiming Mountain. After making up his mind, Ji Tianxing started to prepare. The next morning he went to the general's palace to look for Xie Wudao. Xie Wudao was in the meeting hall. He had gathered more than 20 generals to discuss the plan to chase after the remaining demons. After Ji Tianxing stepped into the hall, the generals quickly cupped their fists and bowed respectfully. Greetings, General Ji. Greetings, General Ji. Ji Tianxing stood in the middle of the hall and nodded to Xie Wudao. He said, General Xie, I am here today to bid farewell to everyone. Hearing this, Xie Wudao stood up with a bang. His face was full of shock. The generals in the hall were also stunned for a moment. Soon after, anxious, surprised, and reluctant expressions appeared on their faces. Xie Wudao looked at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze and asked, Young Master Ji, why are you in such a hurry to leave? You have only been in the Immortal Pass for 20 days. You have been leading the army and bathing in blood. You have not had a good rest. Ben Shuai and the generals have not treated you well. They did not even have the chance to express their gratitude. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and smiled. All good things must come to an end. My mission has been completed. It is time to leave. Now that the demon army outside the Immortal Pass has been defeated and fled, it is a waste of time for me to stay. The people of the Scarlet Sun Empire are in danger. They are waiting for me to help them. I cannot delay. Xie Wudao nodded. That's right. The crisis in the Scarlet Sun Empire is not over yet. There is still the Heavenly Pass 100,000 miles away waiting for you. There were 2 main battlefields in the Changlong Empire. One was the Immortal Pass, and the other was the Heavenly Pass. Ji Tianxing's original plan was to solve the crisis in the Immortal Pass first, then help the Heavenly Pass. But now he changed his mind. No, General Xie. Please tell the Changlong Saint Emperor that I will not be going to the Heavenly Pass. I have something important to do. I must go to the Scarlet Sun Empire as soon as possible. Ah! Xie Wudao was stunned. He asked in confusion, but there are still 3 million demon soldiers outside the Heavenly Pass, Ji Tianxing said with certainty. The crisis in the Immortal Pass has been solved. After you have cleared the remaining demons, you can go to the Heavenly Pass. At that time, your 5 million soldiers will join forces. Do you think you can't deal with 3 million demons? Moreover, there are internal problems in the demon race. Now, the people are in chaos. They will withdraw soon. Hearing this, Xie Wudao was relieved. He nodded and said, I see. I understand. Then, Xie Wudao stopped the meeting and led the generals to send Ji Tianxing off. He personally sent Ji Tianxing out of the meeting hall and to the square outside the hall. Young Master Ji, I won't say any more words of thanks. I will remember your kindness. If you need this old man's help in the future, just send me a message as soon as possible. This old man will definitely not refuse. Xie Wudao bowed to Ji Tianxing and said secretly, Young Master Ji, regarding the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, please believe that I will always be a disciple of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. As long as the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains needs me, I will do my best to help you. Ji Tianxing looked at him deeply and nodded silently. Then, Wei Yu Yixianqing, Ban Yunshan, Tua Hai and Sheng Pingji walked in front of him and bowed to him respectfully. General Ji, it is this general's honor to meet you and fight alongside you in this life. General Ji, have a safe journey. I will always remember your kindness. If General Ji has any orders in the future, I will do my best. We are grateful that we decided to follow General Ji. But we are even more grateful to General Ji for giving us everything we have today. Without General Ji's support, we would not be where we are today. General Ji, no matter where you are, if you need anything in the future, just say the word and we will do our best. The 5 generals were also reluctant to let Ji Tianxing leave, but they knew that it was inevitable. They could only reveal the truest thoughts in their hearts at the moment of parting. Chapter 21:14. After leaving the Celestial Overlook Pass, Ji Tianxing flew into the sky and sped towards the east. Whether it was in the Empire of White Frost or the Celestial Overlook Pass, he was just a passerby. Whether it was Lu Baishuang's admiration and secret feelings, or the respect and loyalty of Wei Yu and the others, they were all worldly possessions to him. If an ordinary genius or powerhouse could reach such a level, they would already be successful and proud. But to Ji Tianxing, all of this would become a thing of the past. His future would not be limited to this world. Half a day later, Ji Tianxing flew over the Heavenly Mystery Pass. Even though the outside of the Heavenly Mystery Pass was filled with smoke and the war was in full swing, but he had no intention of stopping and continued to fly towards the Scarlet Sun Empire. Just as he said, the danger of the Celestial Overlook Pass had been resolved, and there would be more than 2 million soldiers free. Together with the 3 million soldiers guarding the Heavenly Mystery Pass, how could the 5 million soldiers not defeat the 3 million demons? He did not need to worry about this at all. What he was most concerned about now was to rush to the Scarlet Sun Empire and kill the heavily injured demon sage Songyu. As long as he killed demon sage Songyu, the ancestor fiend celestial would have no helpers for the next 10 years. Even if the North Underworld Mountain nurtured a new demon sage, it would not be a threat. The journey was boring and lonely, but Ji Tianxing was already used to it. Lan Kun, old ancestor Sanju, and the Jinshan King were all cultivating in the sword world. The previous series of battles had also benefited them greatly. Their combat experience and strength had been greatly improved. Soon, 10 days passed. Ji Tianxing entered the Scarlet Sun Empire and arrived at the Falling Moon Mountain Range. This vast and majestic mountain range was the barrier between the North Underworld Mountain and the Scarlet Sun Empire. Fortunately, this barrier had not been broken since the demons invaded the Luoshui Divine Nation. But in these 2 years, no less than 10 million human soldiers had died in the Falling Moon Mountain Range. The Falling Star Valley was the current frontline. The mountain range and land in this area had long been razed to ruins and had been overturned several times. The soil on the ground had also been dyed dark red by blood. When Ji Tianxing left the Celestial Face Pass, the Changlong Saint Emperor received the news and immediately sent a message to the Scarlet Sun Empire. Therefore, when Ji Tianxing arrived at the Starfall Valley, the Scarlet Sun Empire was already prepared to welcome him. The soldiers of the Scarlet Sun Empire had been fighting a bloody battle for more than a year, but they were still unable to defeat the Devil Race's army. Instead, the situation was getting more and more dangerous. Ever since they knew that Ji Tianxing had participated in the war and won every battle, defeating the demon army, the soldiers and people of the Qiang Empire saw him as their savior. For many days and nights, the citizens of the Scarlet Sun Empire had been waiting for Ji Tianxing to save them from the sea of war. Now, his savior had finally arrived. When the sun was setting, Ji Tianxing arrived at the mountain pass of the Starfall Valley. This valley was in the shape of a gourd. The entrance was narrow, but the inside was very spacious. It had a radius of 200 to 300 miles. More than 2 million human soldiers were stationed in the valley. Rows upon rows of houses and palaces formed a huge military camp. They were densely packed in the valley. At the entrance of the valley, there were more than 10,000 soldiers. They formed a grand guard of honor to welcome Ji Tianxing's arrival. The soldiers were in high spirits. They blew the loud bugle horn and played the inspiring drum music. They danced majestically with spears and halberds. Everyone's expression was filled with excitement, and joy. It was as if they were welcoming their savior and worshipping the 9 heavens above. Ji Tianxing had always been indifferent to fame and fortune. He did not care about these empty titles. However, when he saw the scene at the entrance of the Starfall Valley, there were some ripples in his heart. He felt a little proud. In the valley, there were more than 10,000 soldiers waiting in formation. They were all looking at him with sparkling eyes and full of excitement. At a glance, there were all pitch-black armors, cold swords, spears, and halberds. They were all emitting a majestic aura. When Ji Tianxing stepped into the Starfall Valley, the soldiers cheered loudly. "Welcome to the Starfall Valley, General Ji." The cheers of 100,000 people converged into a huge sound wave. It was more terrifying than a tsunami and more shocking than thunder. Ji Tianxing stepped into the valley with majestic steps. He was greeted by an old man in a purple robe. He led more than 20 golden-armored generals and welcomed him with a smile. The crowd stood in front of him. The purple-robed old man cupped his hands and bowed. He smiled and said, "This old man is Du Chengcheng. I am the general of the Starfall Valley. Welcome, General Ji." Following that, more than 20 golden-armored generals also bowed respectfully. They said in a sonorous voice, "Welcome, General Ji." Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing was a little stunned. He was silent and did not say anything. In the past few months, he had been thinking about how to fight, how to expel the demon army, and how to protect the Luoshui divine nation. He had never thought that after his consecutive victories, the name of the killing god would spread and cause such a huge commotion in the Luoshui divine nation. Today, he finally saw it for himself. The more than 2 million soldiers in the Starfall Valley, whether it was General Du Chengcheng or the many soldiers, all respected him and warmly welcomed him. This was enough to prove that his position in the hearts of the people was higher than the saint emperor of a nation. He was like a god. He had never thought of becoming famous, of being praised by the people of the world, of being worshipped by millions of people. But now he had unintentionally done it. And this result was mainly caused by the invasion of the demon army. To Ji Tianxing, this was a supreme honor and trust, but also a great pressure and responsibility. He became more and more determined to expel the demon army no matter what, and even destroy the entire North Underworld mountain. He hoped that in this world, the demon race would no longer cause chaos and bring disaster to the world. After a moment, Ji Tianxing nodded to the crowd. He raised his hand and said, "General Du, generals, please rise." Du Chengcheng and the other generals stood up. Ji Tianxing smiled and said in a playful tone, "Just now, I heard General Du and the other generals call me General Ji." Du Chengcheng stroked his white beard and said with a smile, "General Ji, since you joined the war, you first helped the White Frost Empire expel the demon army, and then you helped the Changlong Empire resolve a crisis. No matter where you go, you hold the position of Deputy General. You have won every battle and have never lost. The number of demon race that died under your sword is at least over 1 million. Your name of killing god has long been spread throughout the world, respected and praised by the martial artists of my race. But we are all people in the military, so it is most appropriate to call you General Ji. Moreover, since you have come to the Starfall Valley, the position of Deputy General is yours. This old man and the 2 million soldiers are still looking forward to you taking charge of the situation, leading everyone to expel the demon race and to victory. Du Qingchang was a white-haired old man who had lived for nearly 2,000 years. He was a martial arts master with great prestige in the Scarlet Sun Empire. However, even a veteran martial sage like him was extremely respectful and courteous towards Ji Tianxing. He even addressed him with the word, sir. Chapter 21:15. Ji Tianxing, Du Qingchang, and the others exchanged greetings at the entrance of the valley for a while. Subsequently, Du Qingchang introduced more than 20 golden armored generals to Ji Tianxing. Most of these people were the elite generals of the Scarlet Sun Empire. They were all battle-hardened generals. Everyone was familiar with Ji Tianxing's legendary deeds. They respected and worshipped him very much, treating him as their idol. Even the eyes that looked at him were fiery and blazing, flickering with a bright light. Half an hour later, everyone escorted Ji Tianxing back to the Starfall Valley and entered the commander's palace. In the spacious and bright conference hall, there was a huge sand table in the middle. Normally, Du Qingchang would gather all the generals here to discuss matters. After everyone entered the hall, Du Qingchang pointed to the huge sand table and said to Ji Tianxing, "Commander Ji, this old man will immediately announce the news of your arrival and appoint you as the deputy commander. This is the defensive layout of the Starfall Valley and the demon army. The sand table marks the defensive situation of our army and the demon army in detail. You can study it. In addition, this old man has already prepared the information regarding the battle situation and the demon generals. After this old man arranges your residence, I will immediately send someone to deliver the jade slip to you so that you can understand the situation as soon as possible." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Commander Du is very considerate. Many thanks." Du Qingchang quickly waved his hand and said in a sincere tone, "Commander Ji is too polite. This old man dares not accept it. For you to come to the Starfall Valley to help, it is already our blessing and fortune." Ji Tianxing saw that he was about to say a lot of words of thanks again, so he quickly interrupted him. "Alright, time is tight and the mission is important. Let's not talk about pleasantries. Commander Du, arrange my residence first. I also need some time to understand the situation in the Starfall Valley." "Alright, then it's settled." Du Qingchang liked his straightforwardness the most. He said happily, "This old man will arrange it for you immediately." Before Ji Tianxing came, he was very familiar with Ji Tianxing's legendary deeds. He had been very nervous, thinking about how to receive Ji Tianxing. After all, such godlike genius experts would always have unimaginable hobbies and strange temperaments. Du Qingchang was afraid that his negligence or lack of care would anger Ji Tianxing. Now, seeing that Ji Tianxing was very amiable and did not make things difficult for him or put on airs, he finally felt relieved. Within a short span of 100 breaths, Du Qingchang had arranged a place for Ji Tianxing to stay. His residence was within the commander-in-chief's palace. However, it was in the quietest and most magnificent palace at the back, and it was equipped with dozens of guards and young and beautiful maids. Du Qingchang was a shrewd old man, and he considered things very thoroughly. The guards were young and handsome, and the maids were beautiful and charming. They were all intelligent and quick-witted, ready to offer themselves at any time. Du Qingchang did this to please Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing saw all of this and felt a chill in his heart, and couldn't help muttering to himself, "This old thing Du Qingchang, he's becoming more and more cautious the longer he lives. I don't know what kind of dirty ideas he has in his head. Arranging more than 30 young and beautiful maids for me is one thing, but he even arranged more than 30 little white faces for me. What's going on? Do I look like that kind of person?" After muttering to himself, he called out to his entourage in a dignified tone, a strange expression on his face as he scolded, "The maids stay, and the young guards withdraw." The attendant that Du Qingchang had arranged for Yang Kai was a beautiful woman who looked to be about 30 years old. Her name was Guanji, and she was extremely charming. This woman was tall and sexy, with a pair of seductive eyes, and her entire body exuded an enchanting aura. From an 80-year-old man to an 8-year-old boy, it was difficult for anyone to refuse her gentle service. If a beautiful young girl was like a green plum, then she was like a ripe peach. She was wearing a fiery red dress. After respectfully listening to his orders, she hurriedly bowed and saluted. Since Marshal Ji has given the order, Guanji will naturally comply. Saying so, she walked to the door of the study and ordered all the male guards to withdraw. After passing on the order, she gracefully walked over to Ji Tianxing and said in a soft voice, "Marshal Ji must be tired after such a long journey. Guanji has already ordered the maids to prepare a hot spring for Marshal Ji to wash your body and relax your mind." Ji Tianxing was sitting in front of his desk, flipping through jade slips and books to understand the situation in Falling Star Valley. Suddenly hearing Guanji's words, he felt a little strange and raised his head to look at her. As soon as he looked up, he met Guanji's watery red phoenix eyes, and he felt as if he had fallen into a hot spring, like a spring breeze, warm and comfortable. Even the depths of his soul faintly felt hot and throbbing. If his mind wasn't firm enough, he would have immediately turned into a ferocious wolf and pressed Guanji onto the desk, doing something indescribable, but Ji Tianxing's soul was extremely firm, and in an instant he suppressed his evil thoughts and calmed his soul down. He coldly glanced at Guanji and said in a low voice, "You are not a human, but a descendant of the Mei Nu tribe that went extinct 1,000 years ago. You are born with the power to captivate souls and confuse people's hearts. Almost no man can escape your temptation. Moreover, you cultivate the Mei Nu soul enchanting art, so when you cultivate with a martial Dao master, you can absorb their strength." Hearing his words, Guanji's body immediately shook, as if she had been struck by lightning. The gentle flirtatious look in her eyes immediately disappeared, and her blushing and shy face turned a little pale. She stared at Ji Tianxing in disbelief, unable to believe that Ji Tianxing had seen through her with a single glance. In front of Ji Tianxing, all her disguises had been exposed, as if she was standing naked in a world of ice and snow. She felt fear from the bottom of her heart and didn't dare look into Ji Tianxing's eyes. At this time, Ji Tianxing said in an indifferent tone, "You were born with a seductive art and are used to using your beauty to serve others, but Ben Shuai has always disdained such things and disdained to comment. Go back and tell Du Chengchang that everyone is working for the Luo River Divine Kingdom, so he doesn't need to be so cautious. Ben Shuai will naturally do his best. If he dares to act smart again, don't blame Ben Shuai for holding him accountable." Guanji immediately recovered and knelt to the ground in fear and trepidation, sobbing as she said, "Commander Ji, please calm down. This lowly concubine has offended you. This lowly concubine deserves 10,000 deaths. But Commander Du went to great lengths to invite this lowly concubine to serve you. This lowly concubine is sincere and kind. I hope Commander Ji won't blame me. This lowly concubine promises to never offend you again in the future. I hope Commander Ji will be magnanimous and allow this lowly concubine to continue serving you." Ji Tianxing didn't raise his head and continued reading, his tone calm as he said, "Since this is your first offense and you were instructed by Du Chengchang, Ben Shuai will spare you this time. If you want to stay by Ben Shuai's side and serve him, then put away your racial talent and seductive arts, otherwise you will only be rejected by Ben Shuai." When Guanji saw him relent, she immediately breathed a sigh of relief and kowtowed as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Chapter 21:16. After bowing and apologizing, Guanji really restrained herself a lot. The soul-sucking power she exuded, as well as the charm that originated from her soul, all disappeared without a trace. When she turned and left the study, she looked just like an ordinary woman. She was just more beautiful and charming than an ordinary woman. When her figure disappeared at the door of the study, Ji Tianxing raised his head and looked at her with a deep gaze. Then, a black light flashed in his palm and the sword of Burial of Heaven appeared. "Burial of Heaven, I have something to ask of you." He spoke to Buried Heaven, who was in the sword, through voice transmission. The next moment, Burial of Heaven was awakened and responded in a low voice, "What's the matter?" Ji Tianxing said calmly, I don't know what that old man Du Chengchang is thinking, but he actually sent a descendant of the Cha Nu tribe to serve me. Suddenly hearing this sentence, Burial of Heaven was stunned for a moment and said in a stunned tone, 8,000 years have passed, but there are still descendants of the Cha Nu tribe active in the world? In this day and age, there are very few people who know the details of the Cha Nu tribe, right? Ji Tianxing nodded and said, 8,000 years ago, the Cha Nu tribe was on the verge of extinction and was so weak that they could only rely on the great empires and martial Dao forces. This tribe, which is both good and evil, can not only support the empires, but also bring disaster to the world, causing chaos among the various races and making the people unable to make a living. Guanxi is most likely attached to the imperial family of the Scarlet Sun Empire. Du Chengchang is probably old and muddle-headed, so he made this decision because of her. She just left, so follow her secretly and see if she has any problems. Burial of Heaven pondered for a moment before agreeing. In the past, there were some grievances between you and the Cha Nu tribe. Although it was just a trivial matter to you, you may not take it to heart. But for the Cha Nu tribe, you destroyed their plan to attach themselves to the vast divine empire, causing them to be exiled and hated by everyone. Moreover, you even injured Empress Tantai of the Cha Nu tribe and almost crippled her seduction technique. Now that the descendant of the Cha Nu tribe is entangled with you, it seems that this is karma, alas. Ji Tianxing rolled his eyes and said snappily, why do I feel like you're gloating? Back then, Empress Tantai of the Cha Nu tribe tried to seduce me and make me her servant. She even tried to bring chaos to the divine court of the divine kingdom of Taihao. How could I forgive her? Burial of Heaven said in a strange tone, Empress Tantai is a peerless beauty in the human world, and she was born with the ability to charm. In the words of you men, she is a beauty of the highest quality that only appears once in 10,000 years. She is the dream partner of millions of heroes. I'm offering myself as your pillow because I want to be together with you and cling onto the pillar of Heaven's mountain. But you don't understand the situation at all. You picked her up from the bed and threw her onto the square. What kind of humiliation is this? The other party was infuriated, so of course he would attack you. Yet you heavily injured her and almost crippled her seduction technique. Tell me, aren't you recklessly wasting God's gift? After that incident, I don't know how many men scolded you behind your back and envied you. Listening to Burial of Heaven talk about the past thousands of years ago, Ji Tianxing could only smile bitterly. The world knew my temperament back then. I used the sword as my companion, always alone. I only fell in love once in my life, but it didn't end well. I always despised women like Empress Tantai, so how could I have sex with her? Wouldn't it ruin the name of the Kenshin and make the world laugh at me? Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then stopped talking about this topic and said in a low voice, your enmity with the Cha Nu tribe hasn't been eliminated. If your identity is leaked, it's hard to guarantee that the Cha Nu tribe won't retaliate. To be on the safe side, I'd better go and observe Guanxi in person. I hope she just stumbled upon you by accident and didn't deliberately approach you. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly. The Cha Nu tribe has already died out, and now only a few scattered descendants exist in the world. I hope they don't make a mistake. If they really do harm to me, the entire Cha Nu tribe will become history. Burial of Heaven continued. Although I've recovered half of my strength and the sword spirit can leave the sword body, it can only move within a radius of 3,000 miles. I can follow Guanxi and secretly observe her movements without being discovered by her. But if she leaves the range of 3,000 miles, I can't do anything. In short, you have to be careful and be careful. Ji Tianxing nodded to express his understanding. Burial of Heaven didn't say anything more and flew out of the sword body, turning into a wisp of invisible black qi and disappeared into the night sky. Ji Tianxing put away Burial of Heaven and continued to read the books and jade slips to understand the situation in the Starfall Valley. Unknowingly, a whole night passed. Ji Tianxing had been in the study, reading a mountain of information and jade slips without sleeping. Burial of Heaven was hidden in the night sky, quietly observing Guanxi. To its surprise, Guanxi had been in her residence in the backyard of the general's palace, meditating and cultivating without going out. She didn't do anything out of the ordinary. After dawn, she got up and washed up, then served Ji Tianxing according to the rules. Burial of Heavens secretly observed her for a whole day, but found nothing unusual, so it flew back to Burial of Heaven and reported the situation to Ji Tianxing. When Ji Tianxing heard the news, he didn't say anything and just muttered, "I hope I'm just being paranoid." After that, he devoted himself to the war, planning how to attack the demon camp. Late the next night, the general's palace was dimly lit and quiet. Guanji had been resting in her room without any unusual movements. It wasn't until the middle of the night that she quietly got up and took out a black fox mask. When she put on the mask, her whole body became invisible, completely disappearing into the darkness. Then she quietly flew out of the general's palace, crossed the dark night sky, and flew out of Falling Star Valley. She didn't disturb anyone, and after leaving Falling Star Valley, she flew east. After an entire hour, she flew for thousands of miles before landing on a barren mountain. After landing on the top of the mountain, she cautiously observed her surroundings, and after making sure no one was following her, she sneaked into the mountain. Inside the mountain, there was a man-made cave about 10 feet in radius. The walls were inlaid with pearls and gems, and the floor was covered with white jade. Deep in the cave, there was a wide jade bed covered with luxurious fox and moon fox furs. A beautiful woman with an explosive figure and a curvaceous figure was currently resting on a jade bed with her eyes closed. This woman wore a 10-foot-long golden dress and a 2-foot-tall luxurious crown on her head, which was studded with rare gems. Her beautiful face was soul-stirring, like a young girl in her 20s. But the seductive aura she exuded was more mature and charming than any other woman. Guanji was already a flirtatious beauty, but compared to this woman, she paled in comparison. Both were charming and moving, but this woman was completely natural, without a trace. Chapter 21:17. When Guanji entered the cave, the woman in the golden dress was resting with her eyes closed. Her beautiful face, seductive aura, and languid posture made it impossible for anyone to extricate themselves from it. Guanji arrived in front of the jade bed and respectfully knelt on the ground, her palms flat as she saluted. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Without a doubt, the beautiful woman lying on the jade bed was the queen of the Chanyu tribe. Hearing Guanji's voice, she didn't open her eyes and continued to lie on her side, revealing her beautiful curves. "Guanji, what's the result?" She gently opened her cherry lips and asked in a soft voice. This kind of voice and emphasis had a natural charm to it. No matter who heard it, they wouldn't feel disgusted. Guanji respectfully bowed her head and answered truthfully, "Reporting to Your Majesty, as the rumors said before, Ji Tianxing really did come to Falling Star Valley 2 days ago." Her Majesty instructed Guanji to keep everything confidential and not report to him face to face unless there is something important. Therefore, in order not to arouse his suspicion, Guanji endured for 2 days before reporting. The queen slowly turned over, still lying on her side, her right hand supporting her cheek as she looked deeply at Guanji and asked, "Du Qingchang has arranged for you to be Ji Tianxing's personal maid. You should have had a lot of contact with him these past 2 days. Have you ever had any intimate moments with him?" For some reason, the queen's tone was a bit strange and her eyes were quite cold, with a trace of hatred hidden deep within them. Guanji still had her head lowered so she couldn't see the queen's expression. She gently shook her head and said regretfully, "Reporting to Your Majesty, it didn't happen. This subordinate tried to use my charm technique to seduce him, but he saw through this subordinate's identity and origin at a glance and sternly refused. He also said that he despised my tribe's charm technique the most." Hearing Guanji's answer, the Empress's eyes flashed with relief. The corners of her mouth rose slightly, forming a playful smile as she said in a low voice, "So it really is him." Guanji was stunned for a moment, then asked in disbelief, "Your Majesty, you mean Ji Tianxing is the Kenshin from 1,000 years ago?" The Empress nodded slightly and said angrily, "There was news from the celestial face pass that Xie Wudao turned pale with fright when he saw Ji Tianxing. He called out for his teacher and almost knelt down to greet him. This news had long been spread, causing endless discussions in the martial arts world. Before this, I didn't dare to confirm whether the news was true. After all, that bastard had been dead for 1,000 years. But now that I've heard what you've said, I'm completely certain that he's Kenshin. Guanji was silent for a moment, then nodded. This subordinate has carefully thought about it and feels that it should be him. After all, Ji Tianxing is too young. It's impossible for him to know about the existence of my clan, let alone meet our descendants. But when he saw this subordinate, he immediately recognized this subordinate as a member of the Cha-Nu tribe, and even mentioned this subordinate's bewitching technique. The Empress sneered and said, "That's right. My tribe's bewitching technique and soul-sucking power are unparalleled in the world. Not to mention men, even the monster race, demon race, or other races, as long as they are male, no one can resist it. But he rejected you without any hesitation, and even disdained my tribe's bewitching technique. Only he would be so unromantic, like a dead tree. Guanji, tell me, how can there be a cat in this world that doesn't steal fish? How can there be a man who isn't lustful?" Guanji thought seriously for a moment, then shook her head. The Empress sneered and said in a resentful tone, "But he's a freak, so self-disciplined that it makes one's hair stand on end. Sometimes this Empress even thinks that he doesn't like women, but men?" Guanji shook her head again. Du Qingchang also arranged many young male guards for him. Some were handsome, some were masculine, and some were feminine. It could be said that they all had their own characteristics. But when he saw those male guards, he flew into a rage and ordered his subordinates to withdraw the guards. He also said that if Du Qingchang acted on his own again, he would punish him. The Empress suddenly frowned and whispered angrily, "Such a ruthless person should have died 1,000 years ago. Why did he appear again? The heavens are simply blind." Guanji was silent for a while, not knowing how to respond. The Empress gradually suppressed her anger and resentment and waved her hand. "Since Ji Tianxing has seen through your identity, it is very likely that he will suspect you. You shouldn't take too long to avoid being discovered by him. Immediately go to Falling Star Valley. If he has any news or movements, you don't need to report it in person, just send a message in secret." Guanji cupped his hands in obeisance. "Your Majesty, please rest assured. From Ji Tianxing's previous actions, it is clear that he is carrying a heavy responsibility and only wants to expel the demon race army as soon as possible. He has already been in Falling Star Valley for 2 days, and in 2 or 3 days at most, he will definitely lead the army to battle. At that time, your Majesty will have the opportunity to act." The Empress suddenly sneered and said in a joking tone, "Yes. This Empress can't wait. This Empress really wants to see what kind of expression he will have when he sees this Empress again." The humiliation he inflicted on this Empress made this Empress a laughingstock for 300 or 400 years. How can this Empress forget this hatred? This time, this Empress will pay him back double and wash away the shame. This Empress will make him kneel at my feet and lick my toes. Ha! At the end of her speech, the Empress raised her head and laughed proudly, her body trembling and rippling. Guanji didn't stay any longer and bowed to her. "May your Majesty's wish be fulfilled. This subordinate will take his leave." Then she turned and left the cave, quickly disappearing into the night. The cave returned to silence. Empress Tantai lay on the bed with her eyes closed and whispered to herself, "Everyone knows that the second demon Saint Sangyu is overseeing the battlefield of Qiyang Empire. Almost everyone thinks that Sangyu is in the demon race camp outside Heavenly Wolf Pass. But this Empress is very clear that Sangyu is not there at all, but in the camp outside Falling Star Valley. Ji Tianxing is so eager for quick success. Once he goes to battle, he will encounter Sangyu. No matter how much of a genius he is definitely not Sangyu's opponent, and he will definitely return in defeat. He will be seriously injured and retreat in defeat, and his invincible legend will come to an end. At that time, this Empress will humiliate him. I really want to see what kind of expression he will have when the time comes." About half an hour later, Guanji quietly returned to Falling Star Valley without attracting anyone's attention. Seeing that everything in the commander's palace was as usual and there was nothing unusual, she rested at ease. Early the next morning, Ji Tianxing gathered more than 20 generals and discussed matters in the study. Chapter 21:18. After 2 hours of interaction, Ji Tianxing had a good understanding of their natures. Then he called out the names of the 6 generals and asked them to stay. The other 20 generals were all dismissed and left the study. When only Ji Tianxing and the 6 generals were left in the study, he said, "The 6 of you are all generals that can catch Ben Shuai's eye. Tonight, Ben Shuai will be leading the army to battle. As for where he will be attacking, it must be kept a secret for now. This is a good opportunity for you to make a name for yourselves. I hope you will cherish it." The 6 generals were very familiar with his legendary deeds. When they heard that they were going to battle tonight, they were immediately excited and overjoyed. "That's great. We will be able to follow Marshal Ji to battle tonight. Many thanks for Marshal Ji's support and for giving us the chance to prove ourselves. Marshal Ji, may this general be so bold as to ask, if we win the battle, will the military merit reward be doubled?" "Heh, you even know this?" Ji Tianxing glanced at the generals, both annoyed and amused. The 6 generals didn't feel awkward and quickly nodded in agreement. "Of course, we are all familiar with Marshal Ji's legendary deeds and experiences. To tell you the truth, before Marshal Ji came to Starfall Valley, this general had already regarded Marshal Ji as his idol. Marshal Ji, not only are your martial prowess outstanding and your schemes unparalleled, you are also very generous to your subordinates. This is something that everyone knows. This general is not flattering you, but Marshal Ji's martial prowess, talent, schemes, and breadth of mind are enough to conquer all the generals and soldiers in the world. You are a peerless martial talent that only appears once in 1,000 years. To be able to fight for you on the battlefield in this lifetime is a blessing that we have cultivated for 3 lifetimes." Ji Tianxing frowned slightly and said in a serious tone, "Since you know Ben Shuai so well, you should know that Ben Shuai has never liked to be flattered, much less cared about false reputation. Don't flatter Ben Shuai and don't flatter him. If you have the energy, you might as well use it on the battlefield." The 6 generals hurriedly restrained their smiles and put on a solemn expression. They cupped their hands and said in a sonorous tone, "This general will follow Marshal Ji's instructions." Then, the general with the handlebar mustache asked carefully, "General Ji, about the military merits and rewards." Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said decisively, "Same old rules, double." The 6 generals were greatly relieved. Their faces were filled with pleasant surprise as they bowed in unison. "Long live General Ji. General Ji is wise. Great Marshal Ji. On behalf of the 100,000 soldiers under my command, this general thanks General Ji for your generosity." With Marshal Ji's words, this general and the 100,000 warriors under my command will definitely sacrifice our lives for him. Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a dignified tone, "All right, go back and prepare for war. Tonight, we will gather outside the Valley of Fallen Stars." "As you command." The 6 generals cupped their fists and replied in unison. After that, they left the study room full of ambition and went back to reorganize their troops with glowing faces. The study room fell into silence. Ji Tianxing closed his eyes and rubbed his eyebrows, thinking about tonight's battle plan. At this time, soft footsteps sounded and a refreshing woman's fragrance wafted into his nose. Ji Tianxing opened his eyes and saw Guanji in a white dress, carrying a jade plate as she gracefully walked into the study room. She came to Ji Tianxing's side and took out a pot of spirit tea and 2 plates of spirit fruit from the jade plate and placed them in front of Ji Tianxing. "General Ji, you didn't sleep all night because of the battle, so you must be tired. This lowly concubine has prepared some calming tea and fruits for you. Please enjoy them." Guan Zhiqiao smiled as she looked at Ji Tianxing, her eyes sparkling like autumn water, causing one's heart to itch. At this moment, she was wearing a long, moon-white dress that accentuated her perfect figure. However, she had put away her innate charm and seductive power, so she didn't appear wanton or charming at all. Instead, her temperament was gentle and virtuous. Ji Tianxing glanced at her but didn't show the slightest appreciation. Instead, he frowned and said in a displeased tone, "Who told you to wear this white dress? Take it off." Guanji froze for a moment and immediately lowered her head, her pretty face and white neck blushing. "General Ji, is this the place?" Her voice was as small as a mosquito's and her posture was shy and timid. Obviously, she had misunderstood. Ji Tianxing frowned again and said in a dignified tone, "What nonsense are you thinking? Benshuai's meaning is that you go back and change your clothes, otherwise don't appear in front of Benshuai again." Guanji was stunned, showing a bewildered expression on his face. Ji Tianxing saw her stupidity and said in a deep voice, "Such an elegant and simple white dress, especially with tassels and cloud patterns, only she is worthy of wearing it. A prostitute like you actually imitating an otherworldly fairy is really dirty to Benshuai's eyes." Guanji suddenly realized that Ji Tianxing was angry because of this. The he spoke of was definitely his most beloved woman. Thinking of this, Guanji suddenly felt wronged and wanted to cry. After all, Ji Tianxing had called her a prostitute in front of her face and looked down on her so much. It was really too hurtful. But she didn't dare show the slightest dissatisfaction. She could only hold back her tears and bow. "General Ji, please calm your anger. This lowly concubine has offended you. This lowly concubine will go change her clothes." Finished speaking, she bowed and left the study. Ji Tianxing was too lazy to look at her. He didn't even touch the spirit tea and spirit fruit on the table. Instead, he turned around and entered the secret room to make charms. However, after Guanji left the study, her expression quickly changed. A moment ago, she was teary-eyed and pitiful. The next moment, she returned to normal. Her tears disappeared and a sneer appeared in the depths of her eyes. "Ha ha, so it's not that you don't like women, nor do you like men. You already have someone in your heart. The cold and emotionless Kenshin of the past actually has a sweetheart now. How ridiculous!" As this thought flashed through Guanji's mind, the corners of her mouth hooked up into a contemptuous sneer. The day passed quickly. The news that Ji Tianxing was going to lead the army to battle spread throughout Starfall Valley. The 6 generals chosen by him became the object of envy of all the other generals. Everyone knew that these fellows were following the invincible General Ji and would soon achieve great achievements, be promoted, and become famous all over the world. They didn't dare to do anything, but they received General Ji's favor and support. It was simply like smoke rising from their ancestors' graves. The 600,000 elite soldiers under the command of the 6 generals were also envied by the other soldiers. For a time, the atmosphere in Starfall Valley was lively as countless people were talking about this matter. Everyone was waiting with bated breath, waiting to see Ji Tianxing lead his troops into battle and create another glorious battle record. Late at night, the sky was dark as ink, without the slightest starlight. Outside Starfall Valley, an army of 600,000 had gathered, arranged in 6 formations, looking mighty and majestic. Every soldier's face was full of ambition and a strong fighting spirit exuded from their bodies. Chapter 21:19. Ji Tianxing stood in the night sky, looking towards the north in silence. The 6 generals rushed to his side one after another and stood respectfully behind him. Reporting to Marshal Ji, Shi Qingshan's troops have finished their preparations and are awaiting your orders. Reporting to Marshal Ji, Yun Hang's troops have finished their preparations and are ready to set out at any time. Marshal Ji, Jian Fei Yang's troops. The 6 generals reported the military situation one by one, indicating that they were ready to set out. Ji Tianxing nodded lightly and was about to wave his hand to give an order. At that moment, Du Chengchang led more than a dozen generals and flew over from the night sky. When he arrived, Du Chengchang cupped his fists towards Ji Tianxing and asked with a concerned expression, "Marshal Ji, although this old man is old, he is still a hot-blooded man. Now that Marshal Ji is going to set out, this old man is also willing to follow Marshal Ji to the battlefield and experience Marshal Ji's demeanor and might." Ji Tianxing glanced at him and cupped his fists, Marshal Du, you stay in Falling Star Valley, lest our nest be destroyed by the demon race. In addition, you must send out all the scouts to roam around the 2 demon race camps. Be sure to maintain your deterrence. At the same time, you must mobilize an army of 500,000 and be ready to reinforce us at any time, or block the demon race's reinforcements. Du Qingchang listened carefully and nodded repeatedly. Marshal Ji, please rest assured, these are all necessary preparations. This old man is well aware of them. This old man congratulates Marshal Ji for achieving victory and creating more glory. This old man will prepare a celebratory feast in the Marshal's palace and await Marshal Ji's triumphant return. Ji Tianxing nodded and waved his hand to the 6 generals. All troops, set out. Soon after, the 600,000-strong army set out. Everyone rushed through the mountain range, leaving behind muffled rumbling sounds and billowing clouds of dust, quickly disappearing into the night. Du Qingchang and the generals stood in the night sky for a long time before turning around and returning to the valley. At the same time, in a secret room deep in the marshal's palace, Guanji took out a communication jade slip with a solemn expression and quietly sent it out. The 6 generals followed Ji Tianxing through the night sky. They flew for over 10,000 miles, but they still didn't know the target of their attack. Finally, Shi Qingshan couldn't hold back his doubts and asked, General Ji, we've already flown north for over 10,000 li. The area within 5,000 kilometers was occupied by the demon race. Not only were there large camps, but there were also strongholds. Where are we going to attack tonight? The other generals didn't say anything, but they also looked at Ji Tianxing with burning eyes. A playful smile appeared on Ji Tianxing's face as he uttered softly, the middle camp at the foot of Mount Fish Dragon. Upon hearing this answer, the 6 generals froze, their eyes almost popping out of their sockets. What? The main camp of the demon race? Did I hear that right? Oh my God! Marshal Ji, are you going straight to the enemy's den? Unbelievable! Marshal Ji, you simply don't play by the rules. It's too scary. There are at least 1 million demon race soldiers in the middle camp. Marshal Ji, are you sure we're not going to deliver snacks? It's not necessarily snacks, it might even be a midnight snack for the demon race. Ji Tianxing glanced at them and snapped, What nonsense are you talking about? Are you afraid? Yun Hang muttered with a depressed expression, We have an army of 600,000, and we're going to attack the most heavily defended middle camp. Isn't that just throwing our lives away? At that time, we'll all become the demon race's midnight snack. Ji Tianxing frowned and was about to reprimand him. On the side, Shi Qingshan and Jian Feiyang hurriedly tried to persuade Yun Hang. General Yun, what you said is wrong. Isn't this just boosting the morale of the demon race and destroying the prestige of our army? So what if it's a 1 million-strong army? So what if it's the middle camp of the demon race? Under General Ji's iron hooves. Ahem, under General Ji's peerless divine might, 1 million demon race soldiers are nothing but dregs, they'll be annihilated in an instant. The other 2 generals also hurriedly tried to persuade him. They were very confident in Ji Tianxing. General Yun, don't worry. General Ji led an army of 500,000 at Changlong Empire's Celestial Face Pass and destroyed the demon race's main camp, wiping out 1 million demon race soldiers. Everyone, don't forget that General Ji is the god of death whose name shakes the world. He can stop 1 million demon race soldiers with one sword. This general boldly guesses that General Ji will definitely sneak into the demon race's main camp and assassinate their generals and experts. We'll lead an army of 600,000 and lie in ambush outside the demon race's main camp. We'll take advantage of the chaos and kill our way in. Naturally, we'll be invincible. Other than Yun Hang, the other 5 generals worshipped Ji Tianxing very much. They trusted him almost blindly. Knowing that they were going to attack the middle camp of the demon race, not only were they not worried, they were even excited. Ji Tianxing was too lazy to say more. He said in a dignified tone, Sima Kai is right. Ben Shuai's plan is actually an open one. He'll use absolute force to sweep through everything. Later, Ben Shuai will give you some talismans to break the demon race's main defense array. Ben Shui will sneak into the demon race's main camp alone. You guys will lie in ambush outside and wait for Ben Shui's signal to attack. He briefly explained the plan and the process. The generals had all heard of his deeds in the Empire of White Frost and Changlong Empire. They immediately understood what he meant. 2 hours later, it was midnight. The army of 600,000 slowed down and lowered their marching sounds and movements. They quietly arrived at the foot of Fish Dragon Mountain. The Fish Dragon Mountain was a lone peak that was 30,000 feet tall and had a precipitous terrain. The demon race had hollowed out the mountain and built tunnels and caves that extended in all directions. Hundreds of thousands of demon race soldiers were stationed there. Many tall and majestic palaces were built at the peak of the mountain. Those were the residences of the demon race's generals and the location of the scout camp. Even at the foot of the mountain, there were rows of houses built on the surrounding wasteland. Hundreds of thousands of demon race soldiers were stationed there. A fortress of black light with a radius of 150 kilometers covered the ground like a canopy, protecting the entire central camp. Even though it was late at night, the demon race's camp was still lit with specks of light, filled with black mist and dark red blood energy. There were also several dozen scouts and patrol squads patrolling the demon race's camp, monitoring the surroundings. Ji Tianxing used the Celestial Sphere secret technique and silently approached Fish Dragon Mountain. After breaking through the defensive sacred array, he infiltrated the central camp. The 6 generals led the army and spread out into 6 squads, lying in ambush around Fish Dragon Mountain. Everyone did their best to conceal their tracks and auras, doing their best to avoid being discovered by the demon race. They patiently waited for the right moment and the order. An hour later, Ji Tianxing reached the peak of Fish Dragon Mountain and silently infiltrated the largest commander's palace in the center. He did not think much before entering the commander's palace. No one had discovered his tracks, and the central camp was very peaceful. However, when he entered the commander's palace, he discovered that the situation was not good. Logically speaking, the commander's palace, which took up an area of 3,000 feet, should have many demon race guards, demon generals, and experts living there. However, when he secretly probed with his spiritual sense, he discovered that the commander's palace was empty. Chapter 2120. There must be something fishy going on. The abnormality in the commander's palace made Ji Tianxing realize that there might be an ambush here. But on second thought, that shouldn't be the case. Although he had announced in the day that he was going to lead the army out tonight. But he didn't reveal where exactly they were going to attack. He only announced the answer when the army was about to reach Fish Dragon Mountain. It was impossible for the news to be leaked. Moreover, he had used his divine perception to check the commander's palace and didn't find any powerful traps or ambushes. There were only many defensive arrays and secret passages. It was very normal. Since there's no ambush, why is the commander's palace so empty? It's fine if the demon generals don't live here, but why are there so few guards? Ji Tianxing was puzzled and felt that something was wrong. So, he quietly entered the commander's palace and approached a few guards. These guards were guarding a secret passage. The ground and walls were made of black stone, and they had set up an array that could isolate sound and divine senses. The passage meandered downwards and seemed to lead to the underground of the commander's palace. It was so dark that nothing could be seen. When Ji Tianxing came to their side, they didn't notice and were still whispering to each other. Have the offerings been sent in? General Wuxia has sent in more than 80,000 blood, qi, and essence souls. General Wuxia brought 4 blood monarchs and infiltrated the Scarlet Sun Empire. They massacred an entire city and only managed to gather 80,000 blood and essence souls. Yes, only martial artists of origin core realm and above have blood, qi, and essence souls that can be used by Lord Devil Saint. Shut up, have you forgotten the commander's orders? Don't talk about this anymore. Stop talking. General Wuxia and the 4 blood monarchs are about to come out. If he hears your discussion, be careful of your heads. The guards discussed for a while and then quickly shut their mouths. Ji Tianxing frowned when he heard this. He thought to himself, offerings? 80,000 blood, qi, and essence souls? For Devil Saint? Could it be Devil Saint Songyu? He was heavily injured by me and urgently needs large amounts of blood, qi, and essence souls to heal his injuries. Who would have thought that after he fled back to the Crimson Sun Empire, he would not guard the Heavenly Wolf Pass but instead hide on the Ichthyosaur Mountain? What a surprise! If he's really hiding here, then I've hit the jackpot. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a cold smile, his eyes filled with anticipation. He quietly passed through the dark tunnel and walked towards the depths of the tunnel. 300 meters later, there was a corner in front of him, which was also guarded by 4 guards. Just as he was about to turn the corner, he saw a tall and mighty demon general in black armor walking over with heavy steps. This demon general's eyes were very sharp, and his body exuded a terrifying murderous aura. His strength had also reached the 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Ji Tianxing knew at a glance that this person was definitely a fierce general under Devil Sage Songyu's command. He was also the General Wuxia that the guards spoke of. Sure enough, when the 4 bodyguards saw General Wuxia walking over, they hurriedly knelt on one knee and saluted. If it were any other day, Ji Tianxing would have killed General Wuxia without hesitation. However, the current situation was special and related to Devil Sage Songyu. He suppressed his murderous aura and hid in the corner to wait. Only when General Wuxia was far away did he continue along the tunnel. Another 300 meters later, a tall stone door appeared at the end of the tunnel. The black stone door was engraved with the image of a demon god and set up a saint-level defensive array. Ji Tianxing frowned and muttered to himself, "Once I break this array, I'll leak my magic power aura and alert the guards in the tunnel. Forget it, time is of the essence. I can't care so much." He made up his mind and used the God's Eye mystic technique to observe the array on the stone door. In just a few moments, he saw through this saint-level array and found a way to break it. Then, he formed a seal with both hands and began to cast a spell. He shot out a pure white light and injected it into the stone door. The saint-level demon array on the stone door was immediately corroded by the white light and quickly dissipated. However, at the same time, the white light and magic power aura that appeared out of nowhere also alerted the guards in the tunnel. "Something's wrong. Go and see what's going on. It's magic power aura. It's a human. Human powerhouses are invading. Someone come quickly." The originally quiet tunnel was immediately filled with exclamations and shouts. 8 guards holding swords and sabers rushed over with murderous intent. Ji Tianxing ignored them and slammed his palms on the stone door. With a loud bang, the black stone door, which was about 300 meters tall, shattered into pieces on the spot. Countless gravel splashed out and was wrapped in a violent airwave that swept through the entire tunnel. The 8 guards had just rushed over when they were blown away by the airwave. Ji Tianxing didn't even spare them a glance. With a flash, he passed through the shattered stone door and entered a spacious hall. This vast hall was the first underground floor of the Commander-in-Chief's palace. It was called the Underground Palace for short. The hall was about 300 meters in radius. It was very dark and the air was filled with a dark red mist. The floor and walls were made of huge black stones. They were engraved with images of demon gods and Azuras. They were ferocious and terrifying. And in the middle of the hall, there was a 30-meter-tall sacrificial altar. The altar was made of blood crystals. It was dark red in color, with many purple and green gems interspersed within. At the bottom of the sacrificial altar was a blood pool with a radius of 100 meters. Dark red blood water surged and rose from it. Around the sacrificial altar were 9 stone pillars carved with ancient demon beasts. They were vaguely arranged in a mysterious array. Ji Tianxing only took 2 glances before he frowned and sneered. Soul-sealing blood-fusing array? It's actually an ancient mystic technique that was lost 1,000 years ago. It's a top ultimate technique of the blood demon sect. It looks like this is another ultimate technique passed down by the ancestor fiend Celestial. The soul-sealing blood-fusing array was a healing mystic technique unique to the blood demon sect. No matter how badly injured a demon powerhouse was, as long as their physical body was not destroyed, they could use the sacrificial altar and mystic technique to absorb the blood and essence of billions of living beings to recover from their injuries at the fastest speed. When Ji Tianxing saw this array, he was certain that demon sage Xianxia was definitely here. As expected, when he raised his head to look at the top of the sacrificial altar, he indeed saw a black figure sitting cross-legged in a ball of blood light. That was a middle-aged demon male in black robes. His body was thin and lean, and his appearance was like a demon wolf. He had strong arms and sharp claws. There was a huge triangular eye on his chest. There was even a pair of wings and a large tail on his back. It was demon sage Xianxia. At this very moment he was wrapped in dark red blood light. His eyes were closed and he was immersed in cultivation. His figure was hazy and illusory. His aura was also fluctuating. Clearly, his injuries had not fully recovered. Chapter 21-21. Before entering the main camp of the Mo, Ji Tianxing had not thought that Xianxia would be hiding here. After all, everyone thought that Xianxia was guarding the main camp of the Mo outside Celestial Wolf Pass. The so-called pleasant surprise was only for Ji Tianxing. He had been preparing to find Xianxia when Xianxia was in the commander's palace. Xianxia was startled awake by his voice. He immediately ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. His gaze passed through the dark red mist and stared straight at Ji Tianxing. His expression immediately changed. "It's you, Ji Tianxing." Xianxia frowned fiercely. His purple eyes flashed viciously as his body gave off strong anger and murderous intent. He clearly had not expected that Ji Tianxing would come to Fish Dragon Mountain and infiltrate the underground palace of the commander's palace. This seat was not outside Celestial Wolf Pass and purposely hid in the underground palace of Fish Dragon Mountain. I also concealed the news. How did you find this place? Did some bastard leak the news? He glared angrily at Ji Tianxing and asked in a dark tone. When his whereabouts were exposed, his first reaction was that someone had leaked the news. That was why he was so furious. Ji Tianxing followed his words and sneered. Of course. If your subordinate had not leaked the news, how could I have found this place? Xianxia became even angrier. He shouted with a vicious expression, "Which traitor betrayed this seat?" Ji Tianxing showed an amused smile and sneered. "Forgive me for not being able to tell you. Guess yourself." Xianxia was so angry he wanted to spit blood. His gaze constantly changed as he thought of who could have leaked the news. At this time, 8 disheveled guards passed through the shattered stone door and charged into the underground palace. "Kill him. Take him down. We cannot let him disturb Lord Mo Sheng's cultivation." The guards shouted and swung their swords and sabers as they charged at Ji Tianxing without any regard for their own safety. In an instant, saber light, sword shadows, and scarlet blood light swept towards Ji Tianxing like a gale. Ji Tianxing didn't move at all. He didn't even turn around to look. He casually waved his hand and slapped behind him with the back of his hand. Boom! With a muffled explosion, the huge golden palm shattered everyone's attack. Furthermore, the 8 guards were also struck by the golden palm, and they spat out mouthfuls of blood as they flew backward. Everyone fell to the ground in a mess. After landing on the ground, they did not move at all. They died on the spot. After killing 8 guards in one move, Ji Tianxing wielded the sword of burial of heaven. He looked at Xianxia with murderous intent and shouted coldly, "Xianxia, your time has come." Xiangyi's expression was ugly, and his heart was filled with fear and worry. Nevertheless, he remained calm and collected, sitting steadily on the altar and yelling coldly, "Ji Tianxing, so what if you can find this place? Don't tell me you think that I didn't make the necessary preparations just because I was hiding here to heal my injuries? I originally planned to settle the score with you after I recovered from my injuries. Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, then how can I let you down? Tonight, this place will be your burial ground." Xiangyu's voice was low, and his tone was powerful. It was filled with confidence and dominance. Ji Tianxing could not help but frown. A thought popped into his mind. The demon race has always been sinister and cunning. Did Song Yu really set up an ambush here? At that moment, Song Yu's expression changed. His figure became illusory and blurry as he teleported out of the underground palace. Swoosh! The moment his figure disappeared, the 9 stone pillars around the altar suddenly released destructive blood-colored light beams that blasted toward Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing instantly understood that Song Yu was bluffing. He had already planned to escape. He was about to be hit by the 9 blood-colored light beams. At the critical moment, he did not hesitate to use the armillary sphere secret technique, and his figure disappeared into the darkness. Boom, boom, booms, boom. The 9 blood-colored pillars of light slammed into the black stone-paved ground with a deafening boom. The ground was smashed into smithereens. More than half of the commander-in-chief's palace collapsed, and countless rocks and bricks fell. The underground palace was in chaos. Even the altar was destroyed by the shockwave, and cracks appeared all over it. Ji Tianxing had already merged with the world. He transferred the power of the 9 blood-colored light beams to the ground within 1,000 miles. The entire Dragonfish Mountain and the surrounding hundreds of miles of ground shook violently, producing muffled rumbling sounds. Ji Tianxing was unharmed. He did not linger for a moment. He hurriedly teleported out of the underground palace and arrived above Dragonfish Mountain. Under the pitch-black night sky, a faint black light was speeding toward the north. The black light was extremely fast, and its aura was also very powerful. It far surpassed ordinary demon generals and demon lords. Ji Tianxing naturally knew that it was Song Yu, who was fleeing for his life. A cold, murderous intent flashed across his eyes. He hurriedly teleported and gave chase. Swish, swish, swish. In just 3 short breaths, he had teleported more than 50 miles and blocked Song Yu's path. Heaven-cleaving sword. He roared with murderous intent. Holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, he slashed out a 100-meter-long golden sword at Song Yu. Song Yu was forced to stop. He sent out a dozen black shadow claws to block the attack of the giant sword. Bam, bam, bam. The claws clashed with the giant sword, producing a series of muffled sounds that reverberated in the night sky. The claws were all shattered, but the giant sword's power did not decrease at all. It slashed at Song Yu. Song Yu was sent flying back, and he let out a pained grunt. Fortunately, he had recovered 70% of his strength. He was still a demon saint that could not be underestimated. This sword strike only left a trace of blood on his body, causing him to suffer a light injury. Ji Tianxing stood in the night sky, holding the sword of burial of heaven. He looked at Song Yu with a cold smile and said in a contemptuous tone, "As a demon saint and commander-in-chief, you abandoned your million-strong demon army and fled for your life. Song Yu, you've completely disgraced the demon saint. If this matter gets back to North Underworld Mountain, how will you have the face to see others?" Song Yu knew that he could not escape Ji Tianxing's pursuit, so he simply stopped in the night sky. Black light flashed in his hands, and a pitch-black halberd appeared. He pointed it at Ji Tianxing. "Ji Tianxing, you bastard, you've gone too far. You took advantage of my injury to launch a sneak attack. You're despicable and shameless." Ji Tianxing sneered disdainfully. "What morality is there to deal with you demons? What a joke. Cut the crap. I'll send you on your way now." As he spoke, he sent out a 1,000-meter-long dragon shadow with his left palm. He waved the sword in his right hand, sending out starlight toward Song Yu. Song Yu gripped the halberd with a serious expression. His body ignited with ice-blue flames, and he also sent out spear shadows to fight with Ji Tianxing. The light from the spells cast by both sides instantly dispelled the darkness in the night sky, illuminating a radius of hundreds of miles. Bang, 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 bang. Chapter 21-22. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianxing and Song Yu had exchanged a few blows. The earth-shattering sounds of battle alerted the entire Dragonfish Mountain, as well as the millions of demon soldiers. Soon, several demon generals led hundreds of demon experts and charged at Ji Tianxing. 6 blood god illusions also turned into black mist and bloody light, quietly approaching him and waiting for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. On the peak of Mount Fish Dragon, tens of thousands of soldiers of the scout camp were also on standby, ready to attack at any time. Even the hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the army camp at the foot of the mountain quickly readied themselves and were on high alert. Countless demon soldiers looked up at the night sky, paying close attention to the battle between Ji Tianxing and Sangyu. Only a few demon generals knew that Sangyu was hiding on Mount Fish Dragon. The millions of demon soldiers did not know. They were filled with doubts and whispered to each other. General Wuxia and 5 Tribulation Transcendence Realm demon generals led hundreds of elite experts to attack Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing had just exchanged a blow with Sangyu and was about to use his sword technique to attack Sangyu again. At this moment, General Wuxia and the 5 demon generals seized the opportunity and immediately attacked him from all sides. Demonic Dance. Sky-shattering slash. Sky-shattering blood wave. Netherghost soul-slaying sword. With furious roars, the 6 experts brandished their swords and sabers in unison, releasing bloody light, black mist, and phantoms that blotted out the sky. Ji Tianxing's figure was about to be drowned out by the bloody light. At the critical moment, he used his ultimate technique with multitasking. His left palm struck out with 5-colored lightning while his right hand sent out starry sword light. Bang 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 bang. 64 rays of starry sword light slashed the bloody light and the phantoms of ghosts in the sky. Immediately after, the 5-colored divine lightning that blotted out the sky came crashing down and struck the demon generals. Kaboom! Only the sound of thunder exploding could be heard, shaking the heavens. A huge ball of 5-colored light exploded, rising into the night sky like a mushroom cloud. The 6 demon generals were sent flying by the explosion. Their bodies were covered in blood, and their faces were also covered in blood. Among them, 2 of the weaker demon generals were struck by the heavenly lightning and turned into charcoal on the spot. Their bodies were completely destroyed. Before their corpses fell to the ground, their souls left their bodies and flew toward the Fish Dragon Mountain. The other 4 demon generals were also seriously injured. They constantly let out low growls and roars of pain. Only General Wuxia was the strongest. Even if he was seriously injured, he could still hold on. He lowered his head to look at his badly mutilated chest and abdomen. Ignoring his own injuries, he once again wielded his sword and charged towards Ji Tianxing. At the same time, Ji Tianxing exchanged another move with Sangyu and repelled him by 15 kilometers. When General Wuxia arrived behind him and the saber light was about to hit him, he turned his hand and pointed his finger. Heaven-piercing finger. He put his index and middle fingers together like a sword, shooting out a dazzling golden light that flashed in the night sky. Crack! With a loud and clear sound, General Wuxia's saber light was penetrated by the golden light and shattered. Immediately after, the golden light pierced through his forehead and accurately hit his divine soul. The dark purple soul was torn apart on the spot. General Wuxia was killed in an instant. His body was carried by the force of the impact and flew more than 10 miles away before falling down to the wilderness below. After Ji Tianxing killed General Wuxia in one move, he charged towards the other demon generals without hesitation. Sword thrust. As the Heaven Barrier sword stabbed forward, a cold light suddenly appeared and flickered in the night sky. In the next moment, a dazzling brilliance exploded in the head of a demon general. That round head of his exploded into a rain of blood on the spot, and his soul also collapsed and shattered. Ji Tianxing waved the barrier of heaven again and again, stabbing out a few times as fast as lightning. Cold sword glints tore through the night sky, striking those demon generals who were fleeing in panic. Including the 2 demon generals whose bodies had been destroyed and only had their souls left, they were shattered on the spot by the sword light. Just like that, 6 elite demon generals were killed by Ji Tianxing in less than 2 breaths. Sangyu had just rushed over and wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. Seeing the 6 demon generals being blasted to smithereens with his own eyes, he was so angry that his eyes were bloodshot. His body ignited with bloody flames that soared into the sky. Ji Tianxing. Even if I die here, I will tear you to pieces. As he roared, he waved his black halberd with all his might. In an instant he stabbed out hundreds of bloody and black-light spear blades that enveloped Ji Tianxing's figure. Ji Tianxing could only wave his sword to block and defeat the bloody light and spear blades that filled the sky. However, just as he resolved Song Yu's attack, a cold aura of death suddenly attacked from behind. The two blood gods' clones turned into bloody swords that were 10 feet long and stabbed at the back of Su Mo's head and neck. The two blood gods' clones had been lurking nearby for a long time before they seized this rare opportunity. In order to kill Su Mo in one hit, they had personally formed the bloody swords to explode with the most powerful attack. Ji Tianxing could not block or dodge in time and was about to be stabbed by the two bloody swords. At this critical moment, his spiritual soul was condensed to the extreme and his spiritual power was also unleashed to the extreme. He entered a state of extreme focus and gave it his all. At that moment, he could clearly feel that the martial arts bottleneck had begun to loosen. He had already shown signs of breaking through to the martial sage realm. Celestial Dragon Body. Without hesitation, he lifted his head and roared. His body lit up with a golden light that soared into the sky. The golden light that soared into the sky condensed into a huge golden dragon shadow. It lifted its head and let out a dragon roar that shook the clouds. Its power was shocking. Ji Tianxing's body suddenly expanded and he turned into a 10 feet tall golden armored giant. His muscles bulged and he looked extremely majestic. His body was covered with golden dragon scales and he exuded a violent and overbearing aura. He was like a golden armored war god that had descended. Bam bam. The two blood gods' clones that had turned into bloody swords accurately hit Su Mo's legs and back. In the deafening sound, the golden light exploded and the bloody swords shattered into pieces, splattering in all directions. Ji Tianxing's body shook violently and he was thrown 1,000 feet away by the terrifying impact. However, other than that, he did not suffer any substantial injuries. The dragon scales on his legs and back were still intact and there was not even a drop of blood. There were only 2 shallow scratches. The powerful defense of the celestial dragon body was undoubtedly displayed at that moment. On the other hand, the two blood gods' clones were not only unable to break through Ji Tianxing's defense, but their bodies were also shattered. Fortunately, they were blood gods' clones that were almost immortal. Even if they were shattered into pieces, they could quickly be pieced back together. Such a shocking scene caused numerous demon tribe members to turn pale with fright. They were shocked and terrified to the extreme. Even Song Yu's expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with intense shock and disbelief. How can this be? The full force attack of the two blood gods did not even break through his defense. Chapter 21-23. After using the celestial dragon tyrant body, Ji Tianxing's defense and strength reached the peak. He was like an invincible god of war, shuttling through the sky, invincible. Hundreds of demon clan experts formed a battle formation and jointly released a destructive blood dragon and light blade storm. However, he rushed over arrogantly, waving his huge fists and punching out dozens of mountain-sized fist shadows. Bang, 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 bang. A burst of brilliance flashed and a loud noise shook the sky. All of the attacks collapsed and turned into violent shockwaves that spread out in all directions. Ji Tianxing passed through the light fragments unscathed and rushed to the front of the hundreds of demon clan experts. Die! He let out a low growl in a sinister tone. His palms repeatedly shot out divine starfire, which blasted into the battle formation. Another series of explosions rang out, and the hundreds of demon race experts were smashed to pieces on the spot. They turned into pieces of flesh and blood that rained down from the sky. Not a single person had survived. Such a terrifying scene made every demon clan expert feel a chill down their spines. However, Ji Tianxing was in the mood to kill. His figure flashed through the bloody rain and rushed to the front of a group of demon clan experts. Star-shattering fist. He instantly punched out dozens of silver fist lights and killed dozens of demon clan experts. No one could block his move. As long as they were hit, they would die without a doubt. His figure kept flashing in the sky, and in the blink of an eye, he killed hundreds of demon clan experts. Xianxia finally came to his senses and rushed up in rage. "Ji Tianxing, don't be so arrogant." He roared and waved the black demon war halberd with all his strength, thrusting out spear blades that filled the sky and creating a shocking storm. This time he made up his mind. Even if he had to endure his injuries, he would attack Ji Tianxing with all his strength and not give him a chance to breathe. Anyway, this was Mount Fish Dragon, and there were millions of troops here. As long as he delayed Ji Tianxing, the soldiers would activate the formation and join forces to form a joint attack formation to help him deal with Ji Tianxing. "I don't believe that I can't kill you with the power of millions of soldiers and me? In this world, apart from the martial god, there is absolutely no one who can stop him." If it had been anyone else, even if they were a rank 8 or 9 martial sage, they would not have been able to withstand it. However, Ji Tianxing was an anomaly, an evildoer and a monster. He could not be judged by common sense. Xianxia's plans and ideas were destined to fail. 7-star sword. Broken moon sword. Sun-shattering sword. Heavenly dragon world slash. Ji Tianxing constantly executed his ultimate skills and secret techniques, attacking Xianxia madly, beating him back repeatedly. Not far away, 8 Tribulation Realm demon generals and the Blood God's son led more than 300 demon clan masters to form the 6th Saint Demon Battle Formation. They joined forces to release an earth-shattering spell attack, which poured down on Ji Tianxing like a flood. Further away in the night sky, there were more than 10,000 warriors from the scout camp. They used Dharma treasure bows and charms to release a rain of arrows, which covered the sky and the sun. They continuously attacked Ji Tianxing. No one expected to kill Ji Tianxing on the spot. They only hoped to restrain him and injure him to create an opportunity for Xianxia. Ji Tianxing suddenly felt the pressure on him increase. He was like a small boat in a stormy sea that could capsize at any time and be drowned by the sea. The crisis of life and death forced his spiritual soul, willpower, and mind to the extreme. The vast dermic powers in his body were also activated to the extreme. Even the 360 meridians in his body and the 108,000 pores were activated, rapidly absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and the power of the stars. This kind of profound state was precisely the limit that martial artists yearned for even in their dreams. If he wanted to advance to the martial sage realm, he had to break through his own limits. 10 breaths, 30 breaths, 50 breaths, very quickly, 100 breaths passed. Ji Tianxing could clearly feel that the barrier and bottleneck of the martial sage realm was gradually disappearing with the passage of time. On the surface, he was surrounded by danger and his life was hanging by a thread. He could die at any time. However, in reality, he was laughing heartily in his heart. He was very satisfied and looked forward to it. "Ha! Just as I expected, I am facing off against Xianxia and the many demon tribesmen alone. I can only unleash all my potential at the moment of life and death. Xianxia, this is indeed the opportunity for me to break through to the martial sage realm. Hold on for a while longer and I will be able to break through soon." This thought flashed across his mind. He gave it his all and unleashed his potential at all costs in order to reach the limit. The pressure on Xianxia instantly increased and he retreated pathetically. Countless wounds appeared on his body and demon blood spurted out. The surrounding demon generals and hundreds of experts also felt the pressure increase. Everyone gritted their teeth and unleashed their strongest power, attacking Ji Tianxing with all their might. Such an intense battle caused chaos within a 100-mile radius. The dazzling radiance of dermic powers lit up the entire Dragonfish Mountain, making it as bright as day for 100 miles. In the demon army camp at the foot of the mountain, hundreds of thousands of people looked up at the night sky in a daze. The 600,000 human tribesmen who were lying in ambush around the camp felt their hearts in their throats as they broke out in cold sweat for Ji Tianxing. Finally, 15 minutes passed. Ji Tianxing maintained his peak state for a quarter of an hour. His mind and soul felt deeply fatigued and exhausted. His consciousness also showed a brief moment of dizziness. However, Song Yu's situation was even worse. Song Yu had already been hit by more than 30 blows. His chest alone had been hit 8 times. It was a bloody mess and demon blood kept flowing out. His injuries were too severe and he could not take it anymore. He could only use his trump card again. 9 Nether Demon Wolf Transformation. He roared to the sky in grief and indignation as his body burned with a bloody flame. In the next moment his body turned into a cloud of black mist and scattered in the night sky. A pitch-black demon wolf that was thousands of feet long and as huge as a mountain appeared. Every time Song Yu used the 9 Nether Demon Wolf transformation, he would burn his blood soul and sacrifice 100 years of cultivation, causing his strength to drop greatly. He had only used it once before and had not been able to kill Ji Tianxing. Instead, he had been severely injured and had fled. Now that he had not recovered from his injuries, he would definitely suffer an even more terrifying backlash if he forcefully used this technique again. Even the foundation of his Devil Dao could very well be destroyed because of this. By then, even if he could kill Ji Tianxing, he would be reduced to a useless demon saint and would never be able to become stronger again. That was why he was so indignant. However, Song Yu did not expect that just as he was filled with despair and used the 9 Nether Demon Wolf transformation, Ji Tianxing would also change. He also stopped attacking and actually raised his head to look at the sky. He opened his wide arms and shouted in a voice that was as loud as a bell. "Break!" This cold shout was like a sudden clap of thunder, exploding in the night sky and spreading over a radius of 800 miles, causing the entire Dragonfish Mountain to tremble. In the next instant, infinite golden light surged out of his body and formed a pillar of light that shot into the sky. It burned with a golden flame that covered the sky. Chapter 21-24. The sudden change shocked everyone. Ji Tianxing, who was 30 meters tall and looked like a god of war in golden armor, opened his arms to embrace the sky and welcomed the holy aura. The golden light behind him soared into the sky, and the golden light in the sky shone brightly. It condensed into 9 incomparably huge divine dragons, and they roared with their heads held high. Dazzling 5-colored rays of light appeared and covered the sky, extending to the end of the horizon. Such an earth-shattering scene could be seen clearly from 1,000,000 miles away. Even the living beings in the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom, which spanned hundreds of millions of miles, could see it. This was definitely not a martial artist technique but a heaven and earth vision. Only the mighty power of heaven and earth could produce such a shocking scene. Song Yu, who had transformed into the 9 Nether Demon Wolf, stared at Ji Tianxing with his 3 eyes and was stunned. He was stunned for a moment before he realized what had happened and roared. "You actually broke through? This heaven and earth vision only appears when one breaks through to the martial sage realm. Didn't you reach the martial sage realm long ago? How could you only break through to the martial sage realm now?" Song Yu was completely dumbfounded. He was so shocked that his body stiffened and his mind went blank. He had always thought that Ji Tianxing was a martial sage and was one of the best among the martial sages. Otherwise, how could Ji Tianxing possibly defeat him and beat him up so miserably? However, the heaven and earth vision in front of him was very real and the heaven way would not be wrong. He then realized that Ji Tianxing had not broken through to the martial sage realm. However, how could Ji Tianxing, who was at the 9th stage of the tribulation stage, defeat him, a 7th stage demon sage? This was simply the most ridiculous thing in the world. Song Yu refused to believe it and could not accept this outcome. A few demon generals, hundreds of demon clan experts, and millions of demon clan soldiers were all stunned. All the demon clan soldiers on Dragonfish Mountain were petrified. They stared blankly at the sky and were mesmerized by the dazzling heaven and earth vision. Not only that, the 600,000 human clan soldiers who were lying in ambush outside the demon clan camp were also in an uproar. In the beginning, many people did not know what the heaven and earth vision represented. However, The 6 generals were very clear that it was the heaven and earth vision when one broke through to the martial sage realm. After they exclaimed, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers spread the news and they finally understood the truth. It turned out that Martial Ji, who they admired and was invincible martial sage realm, had just broken through to the martial sage realm. This news was like a bolt out of the blue and earth vision and heaven and earth. After a long while, the generals came back to their senses. Heaven and earth of the heaven and earth of the heaven and earth vision of the heavens. This is unbelievable. Marshal of the heavens of the tribulation heavens. But General Ji killed millions of devil soldiers and several devil saints. How did he do it? There's absolutely no reasonable explanation other than the existence of a deity. Heaven heaven. Heaven heaven and heaven earth earth. Heaven. Of heaven heaven. Earth heaven heaven of the heaven. This means that Martial Ji is able to attract 9 heavenly thunders every time he transcends a tribulation. He is a rare genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. Heaven. When other martial sages break through to the heaven and earth vision, there would only be 6 or 7 spiritual beasts or stars. There would not be any divine beasts. Now that Ji Shui has broken through to the martial sage realm, there are 9 divine dragons. Divine dragons are the noblest divine beasts in the world. This means that Martial of Heaven and Earth's talent and future are beyond imagination. The heaven and earth vision of Ji Shui breaking through to the martial sage realm is comparable to that of the 3 great divine masters breaking through to the martial god realm. I bet that half of the people in the mainland will know about this by tomorrow morning. Just as the people were discussing, the light pillar in the night sky slowly retreated back into Ji Tianxing's body. The divine aura that descended from the heavens was also stored in his body, refined and absorbed by him. His body and spiritual soul had been baptized by the heaven and earth's divine force and had been completely reborn. From today onwards, he had surpassed the limits of a mortal and a martial artist. He had 1 foot in the door of the divine path. In terms of martial arts, he was already at the pinnacle, reaching the pinnacle. Next, he would cultivate the divine path. It was a superpower that could control everything in the universe. This was a whole new realm. If it were anyone else, breaking through to the martial sage realm would mean stepping into a new realm. There would be many discomfort and confusion. They would need some time to adapt and stabilize their martial way foundation. However, for Ji Tianxing, the most familiar feeling once again filled his body. All the 5 elements and heaven and earth forces within a 10,000-mile radius were under his command and control. Even the starlight in the heavens would sprinkle down formless star forces and naturally enter his body. He slowly opened his eyes, and a dazzling light flashed in his deep, dark eyes. A sacred and majestic aura exploded from his body and spread out for a 1,000-mile radius. Martial Sage Realm, I am back. He looked up at the starry sky and muttered with a complicated expression. Not far away, Song Yu and the many demon clan experts revealed strange expressions. Everyone could clearly feel that after Ji Tianxing had broken through to the martial sage realm, he seemed to have changed into a different person. His aura was sacred and majestic, cold and dignified. He was like a divine spirit that looked down on all living beings. It was as if he had become one with the heavens and earth. There was no aura at all and no one could detect his background. However, he was omnipresent. If one looked at him with their naked eyes, they would be able to see him. However, if one closed their eyes and used their spiritual senses to detect him, they would not be able to detect him. He was clearly just one person. However, when one looked at him, it was as if they were looking at mountains and rivers. That strange and mysterious feeling could not be described with words. Song Yu's expression changed. Deep fear and dread surged in his eyes and he faintly felt like retreating. However, the surrounding demon generals and demon clan experts did not know how powerful he was. They were not knowledgeable and did not know what Ji Tianxing's transformation meant. The supreme being who had once ruled over the 9 heavens had returned. Although he had only returned to the martial sage realm, He had already surpassed the ordinary and stepped into the divine path. This meant that he could finally use all his superpowers and use the essence of the Kenshin way. What are you all waiting for? Quickly kill him. That's right. He has just broken through and his realm is not stable yet. Now is the best time. 2 angry shouts came from the crowd. 2 demon generals could not wait any longer and waved their swords and sabers as they charged toward Jitianxing. The remaining demon generals, Blood God's son, and the hundreds of demon clan experts all seemed to have awakened from a dream. They all executed a secret combination attack and besieged Jitianxing. Jitianxing, who had been looking up at the sky, suddenly turned his head to look at the crowd. A cold light flashed in his cold eyes. You are courting death. That cold and indifferent gaze was like a divine spirit looking down on ants. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.